compete with my waffle. Yeah.
We'll see.
Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. This one, an extremely special episode that I am being joined for by my one and only, and maybe favorite co-host. It's Tyler.
Ooh. Hey, buddy. Good to be back. Feel like it's been forever.
It has been forever. You got a week off because of Nova, but you're back now.
Uh-huh.
Joining us as well on the show, two men, both of whom have been spearheading an effort for a community-created Battletome to utilize some of the, I think we can just say, greatest models that were ever created, not just in the history of Warhammer, but of pretty much model making of humankind, probably. Darren, Owen, gentlemen, pleasure to have you on the show.
Wow, thank you very much. I never felt in a million years that when I first wrote a nomadic halfling hot pot war scroll that I'd end up discussing it with the upper echelons of Warhammer society. I am very proud and honoured to be here. Thank you.
Well, whenever that upper echelon shows up, please tell me where they are, because I'd like to meet them too.
Let us know what show that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you guys.
Come on, it's right here. You guys know that. Nice to be back. Lovely to see you both.
Owen, it is wonderful to have you back on the show again. Of course, as we all know, the Owen Jackson, celebrity, legend.
Did you know that the Owen Jackson, we're not the first group of people to call Owen the Owen Jackson. We're in fact the third group of people, the third to call him.
We've seized on truth.
Owen Jackson. That's amazing, isn't it? He's so humble. He's so humble.
Sounds like a private conversation that's leaking out publicly.
Clearly my wife would just properly identified a legend in his own time, so she could tell right away. There you go.
Absolutely.
And I hate it. In all three aspects of my life, I hate it. But
you love it.
So.
You love it.
So we're going to be getting into the Gnomad Feastmasters Battletome that these two gentlemen, amongst others, have put together.
Yes, many people have been involved.
Absolutely. And we're going to go through that in the show. But of course, first, the news. Tyler, what do we got?
News. Rumor engine. Obviously, seemingly, this is a big old spider. We've had rumors for a while, right? Of a big
it looks like a dead
kit.
spider since you can see through it, and it looks like
That's true.
it's bone. So it's a dead spider face.
I mean, that could still work. I feel like we're going to get the new year. That's going to be the big new release. That doesn't fit with the history of chaos. So it's probably Khorne in that regard. Khorne or Gits. Maybe get some new models here with Gits, this new centerpiece.
New spider gets coming in Warcry. That's the call. Okay, there you go. That's my decision. Owen, Darren, any thoughts?
I desperately hope it's Gits and it's signalling a new Battletome for them because they deserve some love and they've been the people that have been playing Gits for eons deserve some fun, right?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Let's all hope this heralds. I mean, they've got to be coming like in the new year pretty quick. One would assume. Owen, any thoughts?
Yeah, those goblin players have waited long enough, right?
That's right. That's right. David Fraser says new release. You can buy your Gits pre-killed to save you the effort of putting them on the table. So that's great. I like it. Okay. What else we got, Tyler?
Let's see. I'm seeing Eternus here. Must be is that the Slaves of Darkness dude?
Well, it's more that no, you're looking at last week's news that I didn't update.
I'm looking at last week's notes. Okay.
That's okay. I gotcha. That's my fault for not doing the delete. I had it was a busy day today, and this is an early show. But fortunately, I know the news items, so I'll help you out. The next one's the Ogre Maw Tribe reveal. There you go. Which the table of contents is up on the page. Are we all excited about new Ogre Maw Tribes?
Oh yes. Yes. Good grief. I love
hungry. You might say hungry.
Yes. Now, this is really well timed because I'm sure, Darren, you remember that in the old world, the small hungry people, which at that time were halflings or whatnot, and the big hungry people, ogres or whatnot, they had the same root ancestor. Right? They both, so there was one singular, very hungry species that then evolved in two different directions, one getting more compact and tiny, but one getting much more big. But they both had endless appetites. That was part of the thing. They both came from the same core species.
Yes. And that is going to be relevant, which we'll discuss a bit later on.
There you go. So I'm sure that this can only be, like, they knew with the Gnomad Feastmasters Battletome coming out, they had to get that hot ogre information out there to compete. Right? That's what it is. They know.
They've known it's been coming for a little while. I've made no secret of it, so I'm pretty sure they've sent plenty of spies.
That's right. Infiltrators in the organization, doubtless.
They've got that much power, right?
Yeah.
They're that insidious.
I think we can all hope for better for the ogres than they got last time, but just don't make it like the ogres launch in 6th edition, and I'll be happy. That's all I want. So, for those
I'm
of
a
you
little
who played
concerned
back
there's
then.
no real new Warscrolls. It's just all the same.
Look, the meat's all there. We just got to make a better stew, okay? Like, we got everything we need in the ogre book. What do you got? You got ogres with guns, and you got ogres who write things. That's it. What else do you need? You know?
Yeah.
7 Warscrolls and Iron books, and we're kicking around with a plus 50% win rate for the past, 5 years. We can do it. We have the technology. I'm just saying.
It's just those more tribes players have had a singular diet for too long, right? They need to diversify.
Exactly.
away from the Frostlord on Stonehorn. There's more to the. Hopefully, there's going to be a lot more to the book, and the man-eaters have stuck around, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Did they? Are you unable to get them anymore? Which suggests that there are new models.
That's the hope. That is the rumor. Yes, they were removed from the site. We all hope and pray that what's his name, the Black Powder's Buccaneers or whatever, right? The guy who was in the Underworld's warband is like the herald of a new world of good man-eaters. Maybe give them not a crap scroll as well to go with some new sculpts, and I'd be in heaven because man-eaters are like the coolest idea.
I remember when their Warscroll came out in fantasy, and the models came out in fantasy, and they were just fantastic. You had a pirate, you had like a ninja, and that they were some of my favourite models of the ogre range before. And now there's so much more they could do with it in Age of Sigmar, isn't there? Yeah,
1,000%. Like the idea of borrowing from other cultures, which was always their thing, right? Boy, oh boy, you expand that to the mortal realms. I can't wait to see the Lumineth man-eater. That's a real fun one right there. What that whack? He's just gonna have the biggest hat.
He's gonna be busting out those robes though, isn't he? They're gonna be real tight.
Still normal size robes, yeah, just like stretched across him. Absolutely.
Gonna be eating some fried wine though.
All right, and then our last news item was. Oops, sorry, I need to switch. That's not coming yet. Hold on for that one. Here we go. Is to this. There we go. Is Drom and the Gore Chosen. We got the Warscrolls for this Underworld's warband. Drom is he is a priest. He is a slaughter priest, as a matter of fact. He is the coolest looking slaughter priest.
Yeah, I can relate.
This dude's amazing. You're gonna see this dude at Golden Demon hardcore. This unit will show up in the unit category. This guy will show up in the single figure. This dude is gonna be out there. So get used to him. And he's kind of interesting. He has like a very different sort of Blood Boil type of thing. That's more of a line for multiple unit D3 mortals. He can unbind. He's a 6 wound, 5 up save guy. And then he brings 2 dudes with him that are both fine. His little Gore Chosen guys, both of whom have 4 wounds. And it's effectively 14 wounds, 2 units for 180 points. Not bad in Khorne, depending on what all happens with them in the long term and how Blood Tithe works. But yeah, I don't hate him.
And his ability, can it hit friendly troops as well? Can you kill your own? Is it anything within the line takes D3 mortal wounds?
No, sadly, it's just each enemy unit in passed across by
Living.
that line. I know, right? What a missed opportunity. Apparently, Khorne is suddenly very much worried about friendly fire. I don't understand.
He does not
Doesn't make any
care.
sense. Yeah.
I can imagine him being the worst boss though, because those two lads are going to be cut all the time. You're going to take blood sacrifice on Drom, and he's going to be abusing his co-workers like 5 turns a day.
Yeah, absolutely. I should point out that while they're around him, they also give him a 4-up ward, which makes him about the toughest Slaughter Priest in the world, because most of the time Slaughter Priests die pretty easy. So if they're standing around him, then he's actually, got a 4. So he's 5-up, 4-up. Pretty great, actually.
In that case, he's going to be cutting himself and then not taking the wounds. That's the way to do
Absolutely.
it, I
Yeah,
reckon.
just sawing away, right? Yeah. It's that ward save that really sells it for me. So pretty cool. Yeah, good stuff. And the main guy that he comes with has a neg 2 rend attack, which I always like to see. You like to see the neg 2 rend. So at any rate, that's these guys. I think they're pretty cool. Yeah, 180. I could see them. I think you'll see them in some lists, and the models are
I'm
obviously
collecting
gorgeous.
Mortal Khorne at the moment. I'm getting a Mortal Khorne army ready, so I think I'll be slotting these bad boys in there.
There you go.
Cool.
I can only hope though. Like, I think whenever the next Khorne book comes, it's going to be such a sea change. Because if you really if you're a hardcore Johnny that really loves the sort of ballet dance of synergy in current Khorne, I just have a very distinct feeling that will not be the experience of Khorne 3.0, where books are meant to feel like the army's supposed to play, and we're gonna have a Nurgle sort of you're no longer the fastest army in the game anymore, or maybe you are again now because of big giant flies. But I mean, Khorne should just it will be the hardest handbrake turn from Johnnyville into Timmyland in history if they do the army correctly, because it should just be what are we doing? Killing. Let's get into it, boys. Here we go.
Yeah. Agree with that.
I think they're going to go from prog rock to heavy metal, aren't they?
Pretty much, yes. That is such a good analogy. Absolutely. Absolutely correct. Yeah. So that's my particular feeling. Oh, I hear the heralds incoming. At any rate, we'll pause here for a moment because I have the distinct feeling my wife's about to walk into the room. That was right. I knew.
I don't know how.
Yes,
She could sense it. That's
that's fine. I'm on right now,
Oh, I forgot.
and that's fine. But the Owen Jackson is on. Yeah, there he is.
Hey, Kathy. You know what you did.
Hi, Owen Jackson.
You know what you've done.
Is that the? No, I know that.
I'm not important.
Okay,
I'm not
Tom.
important, lovely. Don't worry about me.
Yes.
No, it's Tom. It's fine.
No Tom,
No
correct.
Tom. It's fine.
Yes, that's right.
Little Tommy Lyons can be on the next show.
Yes. Okay. Very good. Anything else you needed, dear?
Apparently not.
No.
I'm opening your package.
That's fine. All right. Well, we'll just let this chaos happen while the show goes, while the dogs go
No, that was
insane.
perfect. That was
Absolutely.
perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to happen. So
We were all wondering, would you sense that Owen was on the show?
There was a disturbance in the force.
Sure, absolutely.
They found your bag after you left,
Oh, okay,
and
that's
so
fine.
Emily sent you your Nova thing.
Very nice.
Very cool. Very nice of her.
All right.
Should I probably take my dog out?
Yes,
Since she's the
I
loud
wouldn't
one?
care if it wasn't for your dog.
But she's so cute.
She's too loud.
She has strong opinions, like her owner.
I'm sure. All right. With that, that's right. With that little distraction done there, it was very nice. Let's go to some pick of the week. All right, Darren. I have a feeling I know what you want to share, but what would you like to share with everybody this week?
I'm not going to pick myself in. I would like to. So Sam Thompson does interviews with various people within the community, and this week he released an interview on his podcast with David Kerr from Australia, who I've had the pleasure
cool.
of meeting at Worlds, and he is an absolute gent in Warhammer. He's got loads of interesting things to say. Sam's got a really nice, easy way within his interviews. You know, a bit like you chaps. You know, you're very socially acute, as is Sam. It was a joy to watch. So I'd thoroughly recommend that. You can find him on Twitter at the Unidentified Wargamer, and Sam Thompson, I think, are his 2 Twitter handles. But I'd recommend those. He's got like 30 interviews with various people.
Nice.
Top chap.
Awesome.
Wait,
very
I'll check
cool.
that out.
All right, Owen, what about yourself? What would you like to shout out?
So, mine isn't really of the week, but I did check, and it was in the last month, so I think it's still,
Perfectly fine.
But yeah, Rob, Honest Wargamer Rob, friend of the show and friend of us all. He recently did Tabletop in 10 minutes, which is this new format he's looking to expand for, competitive wargaming, and looking to, consolidate down a whole... He goes all the way around the world, doesn't he, and films all of these events, and he's got all this content, and he's been thinking of a way to then, present that in a really editable format, probably for the Zoomers, the youngsters out there with their short attention spans. So he consolidates down a game between Noah from American team and Ridge from the Season of War from the recent Summer Slaughter, Iron Jaws versus Seraphon, and it's a really dynamic game. There's some good drama in it, and I think it's a really interesting format. So if anybody missed that, I would recommend Tabletop in 10 minutes, which is on the Honest Wargamers channel.
Very nice. Yes, it's a great breakdown. I really like his format there. I hope he does do more of it. Would you like a very, very quick? I know we're in the middle of this. Would you like a very quick, fun story about Ridge and Season of War?
Oh, 100%. Love Ridge. Good
Absolutely.
man.
Ridge is obviously awesome. Saw him again at Nova. So he came to NashCon this year where we were at. And he just happened, by complete happenstance, he was across from me in game 1. Like, in other words, I'm playing somebody and he's like at the next table right here, right? And so he sits down and he's talking to everybody, and I was like, oh, hey, Ridge, good to see you, blah, blah, blah. And he says, hey, well, I've got this for everybody. He hands everybody a Season of War dice, like just a single die. Like, as is pretty common to, you hand out your club die. He gives one to his opponent. He gives one to my opponent and one to me. And I was like, I shall cherish it forever. I will use it for every priority roll and only priority rolls for the rest of this tournament. Okay?
I hear about Canadian dice, right? Okay.
So, I did not lose priority for the entire rest of the tournament. There was one roll that did not go in my favor. Every time somebody rolled a 6, I would roll a 6 to match them and get and retain the decision to choose every time.
That's perfect. Wow. That's perfect, isn't it?
It was... That die was unstoppable. It is now my priority die. It's the only thing I roll for priority in all games I play. One of my most treasured dice.
I'm sure that still will not help Jordan win priority rolls on that poor man.
Have we now understood the combination of Ridge taking the best army in the game and with these amazing dice? Then that's maybe goes towards his level of success on the table.
Well, yeah, the funny part is I saw him roll, and he wasn't even using a bunch of them. Like, he had a few mixed in, but he just had like a bunch of dice, right? Because it's Seraphon, so just a bunch of dice for different purposes. And I was like, that is hilarious. Yes, exactly. Oh, Ridge is in the chat. What's up, Ridge? And yes, it was a winner, buddy. That thing could not be stopped. It was just like, there was a turn where I needed to retain the priority, and my opponent rolled a 6, and if I won, I would still retain it, right? And I'm like, oh boy, roll straight 6 every time. Just like, boom, laying it down. Couldn't be stopped. All right, Tyler, what do you got? What's your pick?
All right, 2 quick ones. So hopefully everybody's seen the hashtag Faces of Warhammer over this last week. It's been fantastic. Yeah. So it started by, I think her Twitter is at the Warhammer Girl, I believe. I think her name is Rachel. So I've been a little out of social media over the last couple of weeks, but I saw it. It's amazing. I know there's a backstory with it. That's unfortunate things that happened, but the community came together, turned it around, and it's brilliant to see. So.
The collage of faces is wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really cool. Everybody holding up their stuff. Yeah, it's awesome.
It's very cool. So it's on Instagram, it's on Twitter. It's just been amazing to see over the last week. So that, and then there's a certain podcast, probably my favorite podcast, there right now. It's called Miscast. Does that ring a bell,
Oh,
guys?
you.
Miscast podcast. Like this Alex Q really carrying the show in particular, I think.
100%.
Got-
Very, very good.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's got 2 other guys on it. They're pretty good too. They've had some amazing episodes going into the deets on things like strategy and list building and deployment, and a lot of sensible things to say. So I've been really enjoying that show.
A lot of sensible things to say. I will take that. I will take that.
That is very high praise from Tyler. Very high praise.
Thank you, Tyler. Maybe not in the first 10 to 15 minutes. There's not a lot of sense in that.
Yeah, you
but,
might. That's the
Sorry.
nonsense part of it, which is really enjoyable in itself. But yeah, Darren's really
nice.
featured in that part.
I need to get a lot of my waffle out so that the rest of the show, other people can actually get a word in.
There you go. Don't worry. We'll plow through it. I have no doubt. It's going to be tight story. I like that the book does flow very naturally, as we'll see. So I'm not too worried about that. You guys did a really good job on that part. I'll just say that up in advance. All right, my pick of the week, very quickly, rerolling ones, battle report. I very much enjoyed it. Little Seraphon versus Fire Slayers. And it's always fun to watch giant dinosaurs step on tiny dwarves. It's pretty much one of my favorite things in the world. Any battle report where Fire Slayers die is a good battle report in my book. So check it out. All right, let's do a little hobby time. Darren, what have you been working on? What's been on your table?
I am, like I say, I'm getting ready a Mortal Khorne army, and I recently finished off my bone splitters. One of my chaps in my Patreon was so kind to 3D print me 2 rogue idols and a Kron spine as well. So I've been working on those, and I build for people. So last month I put together 10,000 points, like 2,000 points for Benjamin Sava, another 2,000 points for a couple of other chaps. And I'm currently working on, I'm just finishing actually a Nighthaunt army. I really enjoy building, other than spirit hosts, they can get in the sea. They are horrendous. But other than those, the rest of the models are a joy to build. So I've been really enjoying getting my Mortal Khorne up to speed, finishing my Bone Splitters, good grief. And actually, I very rarely finish anything, so I was very pleased with that.
Nice.
Yeah, and these Nighthaunt.
If there was ever a statement that summed up the phrase "one man's meat is another man's poison," it would be what you just said, where I'm pretty sure that would be like an actual layer of hell that I would be assigned to. It'd be like, now you will just assemble models and never paint them. I'll be like, oh, well, okay. I got it. Okay, well, this is definitely
I
hell.
build for commission painters. You know, I can make your life easier. If you want to get models sent to me, I'm £12 an hour, my love.
That's an excellent price. Perfectly reasonable. Owen, what's been on your desk, buddy?
Gnomad Feastmasters Battletome, which has meant that there's no room for any hobby. So no, that's my only little minor dig there. No, what have I been doing? I've been doing a Tyler recently, I must say. I've gone from I've gone from the hobbyist to the gamer, and yeah, I built and painted some Seekers recently for my Sylvaneth. That's what I'm playing at the moment.
Good choice.
But yeah, I'm really enjoying that side of things. But yeah, my hobby has mainly been working on the tome and playing games. I've been bopping around doing a few tournaments. But I'm Darren, you're going to love this. I don't think I've told you. I'm working on a new little Sylvaneth list. So the Celestin Prime will be on my desk.
Oh
tomorrow.
my God, I can't
There
love
we
the
go.
Owen Jacks. Darren,
Say
you
what?
and I, we're original primetime team, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think.
I love
I
it.
think there's something there with so Prime, casting loads of spells through a word, loads of Kurnoth bow hunters, and maybe a Horrorghast in there. So yeah, Prime time tomorrow morning will be building and painting.
Horrorghast is on the rise, isn't it? When I first saw the new Endless Spells, I was like, that made my eyes pop out, you know. Horrorghast, I'm glad to see that other people are starting to get on board with that Endless Spell because it's bonkers.
Yeah.
Good.
Tyler, what have you been painting,
Fantastic,
buddy?
Yes.
How goes the journey?
Yeah, well, I do have to get back into it. I'm working on a project I can't talk about yet. So I've been a little distracted by that, but hopefully soon. And then been buying some things. Been buying a little bit more Nurgle, not Blight Lords. Get out. And so I do need to get back to painting. Been a little lazy. I gotta say, Owen, I told you this in a private DM. I just loved your game. Table 1. Oh, it was a heartbreaker, my friend. You almost had it.
Yeah,
That's about as brutal as it gets facing Gavin game 1. But it was such a good game. So just
thank you. Yeah. It was a hell of a draw. Nova round 1, 140 players, and I get Gavin with Croak. But I think if that turned 4, I'd done a couple of things differently. Then I reckon I could have had him. So I appreciate your message. It was an amazing game. Thank you. Available on Season of War, I believe. I think
Indeed.
They streamed that. Yeah. So.
Yes. Gareth said, of course, Owen was so close to being the top Welshman, but sadly just missed out on that title. It was a new award that was just given out this year at Nova. So we'll have to see if it continues.
I'll get him next year.
There you go. You go.
Don't worry, Vince. I'll get him next year.
I look forward to it. For myself, this is going to be quick. I have been painting 2 things I can't show you, and I played a game I can't talk about. So there we go. What a fun time I've had.
Excellent.
So there you go.
Your own game came out recently.
It did.
Didn't it? I just wanted to say congratulations on that. It looks absolutely bonkers. Are you pleased with the response? The response has been super positive, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yes. I am beyond pleased. I'm thrilled. It seems like a lot of people are playing it and having a great amount of fun with it. Yeah, we launched Space Station Zero a couple weeks back, and people have been having a great time.
I love the
discussion. So lots of people sharing their games in the Discord, like model it, sharing their hobby as they model up their crews to go in. So it's just great. And because it is a pretty challenging branching narrative, it's fun watching people discover the different challenges as they sort of wind their way through, and then just be like, this is easy. This is so simple. And then hitting like one of the real buster challenges and being like, oh my God, why is it so hard? And I'm just like, I warned you. Okay. So there you go. At any rate, but yes, it's been great, and I couldn't be more happy. So 100%. I'm so happy I'm already working on the next game. So there you go. That's my life. You finish one thing, you just start writing the next one.
Oh, fantastic.
No rest for the wicked. All right. Well, speaking of our projects, I think it's time we get into the main segment, which is talking about some Gnomad Feastmasters. Here I have the book. Let me bring down this percentage just a little bit so we get centered up there. There we go. Okay. Before we get into any of the rules or anything like that, since we have the main people here, I want to talk about why. Like, Darren, start with you. Why? I mean, again, it's a lot of work. I think you yourself learned just how much work this is, and you drag Owen along and everybody else who's in. Like, this is, it is a mind-bending amount of work to put together a Battletome, right? It's not something you just do on the fly. A huge amount of effort.
You're telling me. You guys are insane. I worked on 4 battle plans with a few others, and it took me like 4 months to get those into a good place with War Code. I can't imagine doing a Battletome.
It's a lot more work. Sorry, go on.
Why did you do this? And 2, we've already had calls because everybody loves the art. Where is this cover art from? So there we go. So tell us about both those things.
So Sam Manley is responsible for the cover art. He's absolutely nailed this brief. Owen came up with a concept. We had like a couple of ideas when I visited. Part of this process meant I got to go visit Owen in his lovely abode a couple of times, and I now call it my happy place because I love going to visit Owen. And we'd had a couple of ideas going around there, but Owen's very good at looking at what else exists out there, and we really wanted to keep it sort of true to, the GW vision. And normally you've got like an elite troop and it's central. So this is why you can see here a nomad scout, which is just about as elite as they get, and he's just absolutely nailed this. But when I first saw it, I almost cried. I was like, this is exactly what I wanted. We wanted imagining sort of halflings in the mortal realms. We really wanted to sort of mature them a little bit, because
Sure.
a bunch of little dudes throwing pies at each other, that doesn't work in the realms. It's okay in the moot, let's say. It's okay for Blood Bowl, but it doesn't make sense in the realms, does it? Where everything is so severe.
Right.
So we really wanted to mature them a little bit, even down to the little detail of the guy's eyes. Like, how determined does that chap look? He's protecting that trail, you know. I love the woman scout that you can just see off there to the
Yep.
right. If you get a chance to zoom in on her, she's just chef's kiss, wonderful. It first started, to answer your sort of first question there. JP Gannis got in touch with me, the guy that's responsible for Listbot. I'm sure you know of them.
Yep.
JP Gannis. He got in touch with me to say, Darren, would you be interested in writing a couple of Warscrolls for me so we could put it through Listbot and just see what comes out, you know? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's cool. And it coincided with me seeing on Twitter this beautiful conversion of, and you showed it earlier slightly by mistake.
Oh yes. I'll actually no. Go ahead. I'll bring it up right now.
Yeah, please do. I saw this, Stu Cunningham, I think, is responsible. But I was just scrolling through Twitter one day and I saw this giant war cockerel with like a halfling general on it. And I was like, that is stunning. That to me is Warhammer. I wish that I had come up with that conversion. And I thought to myself, it's a shame that if he ever finishes it and uses it, he'll only be able to use it in a Cities of Sigmar army as a proxy. This thing is so good it deserves its own war scroll. So it's what I chose to do for JP. And then I thought to myself, well, I can't just do a general. I'll do a hot pot. I'll do some basic halflings. I'll do this, that. I can't remember how many war scrolls I ended up doing in the end. And then you just go down. I enjoyed it, but the war scrolls themselves were flat. You know, there was no... I was thinking to myself, I'm quite happy with the rules, but I don't care about any of this because there's no story. You know, right. So then I started thinking to myself, well, I started adding the little blurbs that you see at the top of abilities or at the top of, you know, war scroll descriptions. And then I started thinking to myself, long story short, I had a lot of fun. And I went back to JP and went, do you know what? I'm going to try and write a Battletome. Now, this was just at the beginning of COVID. And the reason I think this happened was because my mind is always, you may have noticed I'm very scatty. My mind normally has a tournament or, you know, or someone else's tournament to get ready for, or a team event.
Something you're focusing in on, yeah.
100%. And there was none of that. People asking for advice had sort of gone down. I had no international events or commitments. I had no singles to get ready for. So I had nothing. There was this massive void and this flooded in. It became all consuming.
I love it.
I get it, Darren. I rewrote the Sylvaneth Battletome during COVID. I'm right there with you, man. It was a rough time for a lot of us.
I like how normal society, the rest of society, right? People were like, oh no, I have nothing to do within my normal sweep of activities. Because my normal sweep of activities are I go out and do things socially with other human beings, right? So I've got to learn how to make bread or do something like that, right? Whereas all of us were just like, all right, well, I guess we're just writing Battletomes and painting and assembling models and playing on TTS now instead. Like that was instantly our entire hobby just like shifted a step to the left, but it was still there. So yeah, 100%.
Super grateful for that because it was, I know just how many people struggled through that time. I actually, after the first sort of month, it was a bit bad, but then I actually thrived through COVID. Like me and my girlfriend, we both worked from home, and COVID was a good time. And that sounds awful, doesn't it? But it was a positive time for me. I learned as well. I started working from home, and I learned that I can work from home. I always assumed that I'd be too ill-disciplined and too distracted to get any work done. I actually did the best I've ever done work-wise. Anyway, sorry, that's a tangent.
No, there you go.
A positive COVID story for you, though.
I love it. Owen, anything you want to share from that? When did you get involved with this? When did Darren rope you into this? Is the question here.
Honestly, I don't even know. I feel like I've been doing it my whole life. No, I'm joking, Darren. I'm really joking.
I know
I
how
think
much work you put into it, man.
nah, it's cool. I mean, the same really. You know, we all go. If you're creative or you want to do stuff like my business, the bottom dropped out of my business. So yeah, I was in pretty early on, alongside running all the TTS stuff. Then, you know, I think I could see the joy in Darren when, like, I took his war scroll and I formalized it into something that was more, you know, it looked like a GW war scroll, and
Right.
you know, we fed off each other in that regard. Side note, I think the cover art, we actually sketched that together during the break in a tournament that was very, very early on. I think it was the first weekend that we could possibly do it, when COVID subsided a little bit. Then outside of Rob's TSN arena in the street, we did a little pencil drawing of that trail thief. But nowhere near the level of Sam's, but it just, because compositionally the cover, it riffs off things like the Caradron. If you have a look at the Caradron Overlords cover, I think that goes to a real desire within myself, and obviously with Darren as well, we wanted it to hit, and we wanted it to have integrity, and it be on a level that people took seriously, because, you know, if you present it and package it in a professional manner, then I think that gives it a kind of, I don't know if credence is the right word, but it gives it a strength, and it's gonna bring people in. So yeah, the cover art it's great. It's actually been done for a very long time, and we've got, like, the actual full art is really nice as well, without the you know, without the header and the footer and the titles and stuff.
I look forward to the limited edition prints, t-shirts, mugs, stretch pants, yoga pants, whatever, the whole deal. I can't wait.
I'm not sure.
The
I'm not sure if
merchandising
that's,
expansion.
is that even possible though? Like, I don't want to. Like, it's
Oh, sure.
strictly non-profit, so we don't want to. We don't want to wake up the behemoth that is the GW legal team.
Sure. Just flying
Well, I
under
get
that
some
radar.
and give them out as prizes, maybe.
There you go. All right. Well, let's get into the tome itself. So, at a high level here, of course. Now, I just have the rules section here, the rules stuff, because I downloaded what you sent along to me. And we're going to focus in on that, of course. But I do want to just, like, before we get into the specifics of the rules, I want both of you to tell me the 40,000 foot view of this army, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. What is this? How does it play? What do I expect? What am I getting here with this thing? Or what was in your vision, in your mind, how you wanted this to work, right? And how it works now.
So I was very, very keen for them to feel like they were up against it. You know, we've got some very strong. We've got to explain how the little guy can defeat, or the little person can defeat the bigger people, right? You know, so the allegiance abilities, there's a lot of them. To be fair, we may need to cut those down a little bit, but they're very strong. I started off with a couple of principles as well, so I went to the trouble of writing them down, and they were no real mass damage. You know, if there is a lot of damage, then it needs to come from unity. Lots of units have got to work together. No just dragon war scroll, for example. I don't want any teleports, because teleports were everywhere at the time. We wrote this like quite a while ago, so this is before like any of the major changes from 2 to 3. So I didn't want any re-rolls. So I was ahead of my time in that regard. But I don't like re-rolls as a mechanic because it slows the game down. You know, a re-roll is essentially a way of just getting to more damage, and you can do that in other more eloquent ways, right? So I didn't want any re-rolls. And potentially it's going to be a horde army as well, right, with loads of little dudes running about. So re-rolls aren't going to help. I wanted the battlefield. I think the battlefield's criminally underexplored in Age of Sigmar. I get mystical terrain, but you just plonk terrain down and you don't really interact with it. I really used to like Warhammer Fantasy Battle, where you had hills and you could hide behind them, and you got bonuses for charging down them and stuff like that. So I wanted the battlefield to feel like their greatest ally. I remember writing that down. So like, there's a lot of the spells they sort of interact with those. I didn't want the lore to be particularly aggressive. I wanted it to be sort of natural and buff or debuff, you know. So those are the sort of principles that I tried to work with. Hopefully that.
No, makes perfect sense. Absolutely. I think that's great. Very, very guiding principle, very first principle, very much what we're about on this show. And I think all those were satisfied in here. It very much came across me in reading it. It was fun, actually, because I came to this reading it cold. Like, obviously, I didn't talk to you beforehand. You know, we were going to do the show, and you sent me along the file, and I just, like, fired it up and read through it. So I was coming to it completely cold, which was fun. By the way, if people want to grab this, they can. There is a link down in the description of the show. You can go download this yourself. It's in beta right now, so feedback is welcome. There is also an email where you can send said feedback. You will also find that in the description. So feel free to give it a try. I have, by the way, by a ton, I mean, I have, I think 30, that sounds right, 30 lumpen groups, little halfling bow dudes. I still have my whole Dogs War army in there. So they became my halfling war, a bunch of them became part of my halfling war band in Mordheim when we got back into that in the mid 2000s. And and then again later on in the 2010s, because Mordheim has a cyclical nature every 10 years. So I'm primed. I'm ready to go here. I got a lot of this army already built.
Excellent.
Okay. Let's get into some of the actual, or before we do that. Oh, and anything else you want to say on general playstyle or kind of themes?
I'll admit that my input is very much more on the art direction and the graphics, and basically I've kind of this is all the design work was me, but I think that Darren and I, through our discussions and understanding the way that he wanted the book to work, then I definitely think that the themes of much like what you were talking about earlier with the new Khorne book, that verisimilitude between how you expect an army to play and how it does play on the tabletop. Like, this feels very skirmishy, and they're using the terrain to give themselves an advantage, because fundamentally we've got loads of little short people who aren't powerhouses, but through manipulation of because they're effectively nature's guardians. That's kind of a really nice header that I like for the army. They're nature's guardians. The terrain and the natural landscape and the trails, they provide them with everything they need for their life, and hence those natural forces then fight with them, much like the Ents marching to war, for example. So that idea of how the army plays, I think then bears out in all the rules and the Warscrolls, and I think that's why it's a real success. Darren won't admit this, or maybe he will, but sometimes he's not as confident in his own ideas as he should be, and I think that the way that he's constructed the army and the richness of it and the synergies that you get with it, and I think the rewarding play experience that you'll get from it, it is a real big success of the book. So yeah, I think I'm really excited to see people play it.
Nice. Now, one thing I'll say, and I do want to say this up front, is obviously there's a couple things that make this certainly maybe a bit challenging to somebody new. Like, this is not going to be your first thing you want to play around with. This has like a for experienced players and modelers or something limited, labeled on it, because so first of all, the models, obviously not everybody has 20 plus year old Dogs of War models and stuff sitting around, right? Or old Empire models. I've still got my Halfling Hot Pot crew as well. But like, those are, those models are long out of print, often very expensive if you're trying to buy them on the secondary market. So what do you recommend for people? There's a lot of 3D prints out there. We live in a modern world, a lot of 3D printing capability. Have you seen some 3D prints for stuff you like?
We have Tyromancer Dan heard about the project on, I don't know what his full name is. I only know him as Tyromancer Dan. Of the chap on Twitter who does all the wonderful Maw Crushers. He got chatting with me, and he said, I think I'm going to teach myself how to 3D sculpt. And he went away and taught himself how to 3D sculpt, and he's come back with, he created one of the unique heroes, that's the giant swan. He did me a war caravan. He did the Gastronome Guard, which are my favourite unit. They're like Ibex cavalry. So that, and all those files will be free for sort of people to use. We'll put them out there alongside the tome. Then there are loads of different halfling like alternative model providers out there. The one that I really like, the one that I used for the army that's in the tome, is TTN Combat. I've got a vast halfling range, and what's really great about that is there's loads of different there's 3 different factions in the tome itself from various trails. So I've on purpose left it open for other people to make their own trails, because I think part of narrative is allowing other people to build on your story. You don't want to write all the story for them. And there are loads of alternative halfling like thing that you could use for another trail. One of my favourite ones is there's like loads of undead halflings. So you could have a trail through Shaiish with undead nomads guarding the souls of the beasts that have died on the Great Migrations. You know, I think that'd be a fantastic army. And that's in TTN Combat. But there's loads. Mantic Games have just released, a couple of months back, they released a whole new sort of halfling range. So I think there's everything you need to make every unit in this tome, either from an alternative model provider or the 3D prints that Tyromancer has managed to get for us. So, without the Tyromancer, because without him, we wouldn't have had half as much as we did.
Very cool.
And I would say very quickly as a side note, the way in which you can use allies and coalition models, don't think that you're going to have to buy and paint 100 troops. There are, you'll be slotting in the style of armies I like, you'll be slotting in your Tree Lords, your Spirit of Durthu, or there are sub-factions which include Ogres or Cities of Sigmar. You can even use a Kronspine Incarnate of Gur if you're that kind of person. So yeah, don't think that it's going to be like 2,000 points of lads. There are options to supplement that with, official GW models as well.
Very nice. Speaking of that, let's get into the rules, because I can't think of a better segue, Owen, than to open the door to that. All right, so let's talk about the actual rules with some general allegiance abilities here. First off, we've got Nimble, which is basically hit rolls for attacks that target your units, your barefoot units, so not your big tree lords and stuff. Always fail on an unmodified 1 or 2 instead of only on a 1. And unmodified hit rolls of 1 or 2 cannot be re-rolled. My simple answer is take that, you stupid elves. That's what you get for hitting on 2s. But basically, so a nice little, potential natural defense there. All the 2s that are rolled are never going to hit, right? So even if somebody's on a 3-up, they all out attack into you, your little guys. Hey, the 2s still miss. So no point in the all out attack, right?
This is the first time I wanted to. So you can equate halflings to stunties, right? And the obvious comparison is goblins, and goblins stack loads of minuses to hit, but that's just a way of mitigating damage. For me, this is a cleaner, faster way of getting from point A to point B.
Absolutely, because it just sets the cap. It just says here's where it is. It also doesn't feel as bad. Like people hate. I know I'm not alone. When we did a big survey on this, there's a pretty decent sized group of people who really just hate with seeing their troops debuffed, right? But when I just get to use my base number, it's like, but that's just the number. You already hit on 3s. You just can't get better than 3s, right? It's a totally different story. Like not being able to use your buff feels very mentally different than making your number worse. So cool. Okay. And I agree with you. Speed is the key here. I noticed a lot of that, Darren, in here where you were trying to, there is a lot of complex rules interactions, right, amongst your various war scrolls and the things. Like, this army is going to take some learning of, A, interacting with B and stuff like that and creating special use cases. So it's good that you tried to keep the rest of the stuff simple and moving along. Okay. Yeah. And then finally for Nimble, there's a lot of allegiance abilities, by the way, because, you mentioned this. The troops are crap. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean, they're little short dudes that aren't very good at things. Right? It's intentional. Yeah. So the allegiance abilities are there, and in circumstances, they're working together or utilizing the terrain or doing these various things to then get them up to be punching above their weight effectively. Okay. Improve the save characteristic of models in a barefoot unit that is in cover by 1. Now, importantly, a unit that's charged doesn't get this, but importantly, this is not the normal cover rule, right? Because the normal cover rule is +1 to save. That is very different. This is actually improve the save characteristic by 1.
Yes.
So if you were on a 6+, you're now on a 5+ if you're in cover. Like, it has set the save characteristic higher, meaning if you put on something like all-out defense, it can carry it to a 4-up, right? Or technically to a 4-up. Whereas it couldn't ever reach that number if it was sitting on a 6. So
Exactly that. Yeah.
One thing to pick you up on there, Vince, is that you do receive the benefit of cover when you charge.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, yes.
So a slight. So yeah, again, feeding into the idea that they are, at one with nature. So yeah.
And they're nimble. They're nimble. They can make use of the cover as they run, basically.
Yep.
Again, they've got to. So it means they've got to hug all the cover that's available. But barefoot. To put it into some context, barefoot units are the infantry. So you don't get that elsewhere.
Yep.
So maybe an obvious question, guys, but so when it says improve the save characteristic by 1, it's in cover. Does that mean you also get the additional benefit of being in
So what I
cover?
originally wanted, so this is before the rules changed, save stacking changed. What I originally wanted them was to get +2 in cover, and then they changed the rules on us. So this is a longer way of effectively they've got +2 save in cover. I mean, some of the nomads start on no save whatsoever, so it's not quite as hideous as you might imagine. But I basically wanted them to get more out of cover than the normal troops. Again, making real use of the scenery and that sort of marriage of protection and and defense. So like a nomad that's got no save in cover will have a save of a 5 basically. But you don't. But if you were rend. That's like you can't go past that, obviously. You couldn't let all that defense on it, but it will help if there's any rend, etc.
Right. And then barefoot, is that a universal? I'm very fresh to this Battletome.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's a keyword. It's a keyword. So, but the infantry, the characters that are on foot, they're all barefoot, basically.
Okay.
Yep. So you'll see. We'll hit the keywords when we get there, because yes, there's some of the other mounted guys or little war machines and stuff who aren't necessarily gonna have those keywords. So it's not your whole army. It's these. Effectively, it's sort of the weakest people in the army that are getting these benefits to help them survive. Because yes, as
they're
we'll
really
see,
rubbish outside of cover.
Right. You want these little dudes in cover and having these protections. And then in addition. Our favorite 2 words in Warhammer. In addition, enemy units may not pick a barefoot hero as the target for an attack with a missile weapon if it is wholly on or within a terrain feature and within 3 inches of a friendly unit that has 3 or more models. Effectively, they have the little barefoot heroes. So again, the little foot infantry heroes, and we'll see some other ones that they're there. Have a hyper improved lookout, sir, right, where they just can't be picked out because they're a tiny little guy hiding amongst rocks with all the other guys around them. You just can't see them. So there you go.
Where they rely on a lot of their synergies, if they just had their characters shot off straight away, they'd melt pretty quickly. So I wanted to give them some form of protection. You can still get them with spells, so it's not completely hideous, but there's not a great deal of ranged threats from them as well. So I was quite keen that when battles when battles joined, both sides have got most of their toys still available to play with. It's not just going to be put them down. They're going to shoot off your characters, or your characters are going to get shot off. So, and it kind of a bit different. I think we're trying to create sort of unique experiences, and that's a challenge, isn't it? If you can't necessarily get to the characters straight away, but you'll see most of them are very weak. They've only got like 4 or 5 wounds. They're not with like a 6-up save. They're not difficult to kill when you do get to them.
Yeah, I don't mind this rule in this particular case. Like, this is exactly the way a rule like this should be utilized, right? I see a lot of people push for rules like this to just be in general for heroes, and I'm like, no. It's way too strong when you start letting it run wild. But with these little weak foot heroes like this is the perfect way this kind of thing should be applied. You know, if a goblin tome came out and your little foot goblin people had this same exact rule, like your 4 wound casters or something, you know, they had a similar version of this rule, I'd be like, yep, that checks out. How do you tell one little goblin apart from the sea of other swarming goblin bodies, right?
Yeah.
What I don't want is somebody like, I don't want to not be able to target a mangler squig or something, you know, like that seems silly. Okay. Speaking of spells, Nature's Blessings. Each time a friendly Nomad Feastmasters unit is affected by a spell or endless spell, you can roll a dice. If you do on a 6+, ignore the effects of that spell or endless spell on that unit. So, just a standard 6-up spell ignore, army-wide. So, good stuff.
Halflings are a little, like I believe they're a little sort of magical and attuned to nature, you know, so that's sort of nature protecting them. That's the sort of reason behind that. It is a bit of fat that we could potentially cut if we have to. But that's the reason that's there. A little nod to their sort of magical origins, I'd guess.
Sure. No, I like it. Easy. And a 6-up spell and spell ignore is it is neither game breaking nor a big deal because it doesn't take up a ton of rolls, right? You don't make it that often. So, because it's not like a 6-up ward or something like that, right? Where you're making it all the time.
There are ways to improve it as well, right?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Later on. Yeah.
And then Towering Allies. Of course, as we know, short, tiny people like this ride around in trees, so that's what we see here. 1 in every 4 units in a Nomad Feastmasters army can be a unit chosen from the following Warscrolls: Spirit of Durthu, Tree Lord Ancient, Tree Lord, or Arwen Jack's Son of the Jade Forest, which is something we'll read later, because that's a new thing. So there you go. You can bring your big tree people with you as a 1 in 4.
Yeah.
I mean, big trees go to war with little halflings. Of course, we all know that. Rouse the Guardians. A Nomad Feastmasters army can summon a Tree Lord by adding Guardian counters to terrain features. When 3 Guardian counters have been added to a terrain feature, the player who added the 3rd Guardian counter may spend all the Guardian counters from that terrain feature and summon a Tree Lord to the battlefield and add it to their army. Any summoned units must be set up wholly within 6 inches of the terrain feature and more than 6 inches from enemy units. So I have a theory question for you here. A couple of times in this book, you have these sorts of setups, and you used 6 inches instead of 9 inches. Why the shorter setup?
So first of all, shout out to Nico. You know of Nico, I'm sure. Like probably one of the finest minds from a rules perspective in the UK, if not the world. He, like Owen, was involved from the beginning and didn't quite understand how much work he was going to have to do.
Sure.
He's responsible for turning my ideas into like words that you can read and understand, basically, that are in line, I think, with a lot of GW's wording. He paid a lot of attention to that. So first of all, thank you very much, Nico. I originally had it as 9 inches, and Nico would come back with some feedback, and one of them was, if you put it at 9 inches, it's going to be hard to actually summon these things. But also, way back when, Tree Lords, if you could summon them, Tree Lords weren't particularly good. So the thought of them being that close wasn't particularly powerful, right? So
Sure.
This is something
They got scarier.
yeah. So rather than go back and change it and add like more work for Owen to do, I just want to put it out there as it is, and then if in games this is too powerful, this is something we can easily change back to 9 inches. But originally, the concern was that people aren't ever going to get to summon the Tree Lords.
No, that's fair. Totally fair.
So that was the thinking there.
And then the last part is if a monster smashes to rubble the terrain, then you lose your guardian counters. Okay.
There should be counterplay, right? There should be ways that you can.
Makes sense, right? You go up there, they're guarding the thing, and some monster comes in. He's like, no, and he breaks all your toys. That's what happens. So, yep. And then I think the really, like, this rule obviously gets a lot of play and additional exploration throughout the rest of the book. So it's not that you build on a lot of these in individual war scrolls and other things, command traits and artifacts and things like that. But this rule really you end up exploring a lot, and that's those lucky scoundrels. So here we go. If either player has 2 consecutive turns as the result of a priority roll, Core Rules 4.1, then this battle trait applies. Apply all the following rules for that battle round. Designer's note: the trigger for those lucky scoundrels is commonly known as a double turn. By the way, you guys heavily use designer's notes in here, and
Oh,
well
well,
done.
that's Nico again. That's Nico again, trying to make sure, just to preempt any sort of questions. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get plenty, but we've
Sure.
done our best to make it as. I'm really glad that you've pointed that out, because I thought it was a beautiful. When I first saw the designer's note from Nico, I was like, that's a great touch. And then when Owen put it into the tome, I just thought, it just looked brilliant.
I wish they would just constantly use designer notes. It's like I use them all the time when I write books, because it lets you just pull the reader aside and say, look, let's talk in plain language for a moment. Okay?
Yeah.
Rules text has to be written a certain way. And that's for sort of the legalese clarity of what the rules architecture needs. But I'm just going to talk to you like a human. Okay? You know what I mean. Stop being gamey. Listen to the words. Okay? And like that's designer's notes are just such a powerful tool. Okay, so if we're in a double turn situation, right? In other words, either player has 2 consecutive turns. Okay. Apply all the following rules for that battle round. So effectively, for the second turn of the double turn is when this is triggering, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So. Gnomad Feastmasters units ignore negative modifiers to their hit and wound rolls. Okay, cool. No penalties to hit or wound. If the wound roll for an attack made by a friendly Gnomad Feastmasters unit is an unmodified 6, that attack inflicts a mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. So wound roll, good control on that, right? And then friendly Gnomad Feastmasters units have a 5+ ward. And lastly, your opponent cannot reroll, multiply, or modify any casting, unbinding, dispelling, chanting, or banishing rolls. Love it. Love it. Take that. Caleb's out there in the audience. Take that, Caleb. All right.
So
As a Nagash player, I hate it, but carry on.
yeah, I mean that's the obvious question. Like techless chooses 4 spells, unmodified pens. How does that interact with this rule?
Techless still gets to do his stuff.
Yeah, he didn't reroll, multiply, modify, or do any of those things. He just set the
He doesn't
number.
do it. He's the
Right.
pinnacle of casting. He's a god of the realms. He's not going to be worried about this too much, right? That'll go in that's one of the FAQ questions. I'm glad you brought it up. But yeah, Techless will just sort of operate as you'd
see.
expect, I think.
Yeah, and then the next example with Nagash is modifying on his Warscroll with his +5 or whatever. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. You've also got things like, obviously, your Lord of Change, where he's ticking the low die up to the high die, right? The spell chicken can't do that because that's a modification, all those kinds of things. So
I just really look forward to the time when I point at a guy who's not really a wizard and I say, "You're not a master anymore, are you?" Just gotta roll it. Just gotta roll it. Those masters of magic. Ugh.
okay.
I wanted to, with this rule, like this, because this is basically central to the nomads. They're lucky. They're a lucky race. But how do you represent luck? And I didn't want it to just be 6s to hit, do a mortal wound. I know I've got that in the wound roll, but I wanted there to be a reason. Shouldn't happen all the time. And this is a powerful set of rules. It has a real impact on the game, but you can, as an opponent, play around it. You can choose not to take the double turn. Do you know what I mean? And it should
cool, man.
happen. It should only happen in a game 2 or 3 times. And it creates the tension of the priority roll. That is real, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Honestly, having play tested these rules, and hopefully Owen can attest to this, there's loads of fun around that priority roll. You get yourself a double turn. You're like,
That's great.
and the nomads have really got to then capitalize on it. And from a narrative perspective, it represents them either getting carried away, and they have the double turn, so they've got all the momentum, and then Nuffle sort of shines on through them because they're his children. Or if the opponent gets the double turn, then it represents them being up against it and luck sort of coming through. So that, hopefully that's the point of the origins of this rule. I've really tried to take inspiration from how I want them to be narratively within the rules as well. So hopefully that comes across.
Sure.
Again, this may be a little cooked. It's something that we can play around with, but yeah.
No, it's great. Love it. Okay, let's keep going. All right, because there's more.
Yes. This is the last one. The last bit,
So, go with your gut. Nomad's battle prowess largely depends on the last meal eaten. Before the battle begins, immediately before setting up armies, roll a d6 and look up the last meal eaten effect on the list below. A last meal eaten effect applies to all friendly Nomad Feastmasters units until the end of the battle. So if they just had breakfast, you add 3 inches to the range of all of their missile weapons and add 1 to run and charge rolls. In addition, friendly Nomad Feastmasters units may retreat and still shoot or charge later in their turn. If lunch was the last thing, then friendly Nomad Feastmasters units may add 2 to their Nature's Blessings rolls. Let's refresh ourselves here. Nature's Blessings is our spell ignore. So if lunch just happened, then basically, effectively, they're on a 4-up, right? For ignoring spells. In addition, your opponent may not reroll any hit or wound rolls for attacks that target friendly barefoot units. So your infantry guys can't don't see a lot of rerolls anymore, anyways. But hey, there we go. And then finally, 5 to 6, dinner. Subtract 3 inches from the range of all friendly Nomad Feastmasters units' missile weapons, and subtract 1 from run and charge rolls, which is, ouch. But, however, Nomad Feastmasters units benefiting from those lucky scoundrels have a 4-up ward instead of a 5-up ward.
stuffed.
So,
Yeah.
so the whole army on those special double turns is going to be under that, well, non-coalition units is going to be under that 4-up ward. Now, this is interesting for many reasons to me, okay? So we're going to get into some nitty and some gritty here. This is, Spike hates this. Like, all the Spikes watching, I know Gareth's in the audience right now, and he's like, I hate this, okay? Because this is completely unpredictable, right? You can't actually, you have no idea to know. Yep, there it is. There's this like, I was talking at the same time he was typing, and this is not a thing Spike loves. Now, a Timmy, especially a certain type of Timmy, loves this kind of thing where it's like, hey, you never know what you're gonna get. Let's see what happens. Like, you always get something, but it's highly determinative on how your army is gonna play and function, and you have basically no control over it, right? I mean, just reading it here, obviously, I know there is some ways to play around with this. Later. Spoilers, there is ways to play around with this later. But what made you decide to pin so much to a very random roll?
They're feast masters, aren't they? So we've got to have some nod to food. It's got to be a real element to them. And I very early on decided upon this sort of path. I wanted them to be affected by lunch, dinner, etc. I didn't want it to be chosen. It doesn't feel very chaotic. They're not a militarized, narratively speaking, they're a nomadic community that band together to fight off people that attack their trail. So they're going to be fighting at any time, day or night, basically. And their metabolism's narratively affected by the last meals that they've eaten. After I've eaten dinner, I am on the sofa like this. I don't want to do anything. I certainly don't want to be fighting off a bloodthirster. If I'm just
to be fair, I don't want to do that regardless of the meal that I had, but sure, I understand your point.
I don't know. After a breakfast, I'll go for a jog. So I like the chaoticness, and I like the fact that you can then tailor your. What I really wanted. I didn't want people to be able to take one single unit and spam it and create a really powerful army. I wanted them to really. I love list building. I don't think that's any secret, and I love the fact that you can really play into this. You can decide to yourself, I'm just going to do a generic army that benefits from all of these, or I'm going to really hope that I get breakfast. I'm really going to hope that I get lunch. I'm really going to hope that I get dinner, and if I don't, I'll put a couple of elements in my list that can sort of control it. So it's just a way, hopefully, of making list diversity and list building more enjoyable, basically.
And I think as well there is a precedent here in terms of like the Nurgle wheel. Like I played
Sure.
Nurgle at the weekend at a tournament, and there's, when I think my opponent rolled a 6, which was probably the worst, and then he had to change his plans. But I think from a general shit point of view, you turn up at the table and there are a number of variables, and I just think it's another variable that you either have to try and mitigate or you have to try and accentuate as a player. So and as you mentioned, Vince, there are ways to manipulate this role or mitigate this role. But I just think that you turn up at the table and there's the mission. There's even further back there's the players pack that you're playing into. Then there's the mission. Then there's the opponent. Then there's the army. There's the number of drops. So it's just another factor that you need to work with, or again, you need to work with. But when we play Warhammer, we want to control everything. We want to control the objectives. We want to control our opponents.
Sure.
We want to control everything. That's I think that goes to the psyche of us as wargamers. So I like the idea of throwing a spanner in the works, as it were.
Add some
Sure.
drama. Add some drama.
Yeah.
This is your
We're all
Elsa
adrenaline
moment. You got to
junkies.
let it go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Let it go. Drink it in. When you play Feastmasters, you just got to go with the flow and make the most of your opportunities.
Very nice. All right. Let's hit the next two here in quick order because they're both smaller. First, and so this is your spell and your heroic action. So your Nomad Feastmaster wizards or Sylvaneth wizards, including unique units in a Nomad Feastmaster's army, know the Tectonic Bulwark spell, which is effectively a casting value 5, 24-inch range spell that allows you to pick a unit wholly within range, and now they count as being wholly on or within a terrain feature, turning on the appropriate abilities that we just talked about earlier for being on a terrain feature, such as the higher save and having cover and stuff like that, right? As well as other things we'll see later.
You could turn up to a table just full of towers. There's no area terrain, and then your nomad army is buggered. So we need ways of making sure they can get into cover.
Right. Yep.
So, guys, how are we? Does this mean that a tree lord, ancient Darthu, could benefit from cover?
No, 'cause they're still a monster. They're still a monster. So that, and they don't
So-
have the barefoot keyword. So there's no real benefit for like a tree lord, for example.
So it looks like we have Nomad Feastmasters for the keyword here for Tectonic Bulwark. Oh, you're saying the original has the barefoot, right? Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, very good.
Right. The other rule you're referencing them in, yes. Because all it would give them is like they count as on or wholly within, and nothing, like a monster still doesn't benefit. Nothing changes from them standing there. So
That's true.
Cool.
and then Expedient Providence. So here's your heroic action. Pick one friendly Nomad Feastmaster's hero. Until the end of the turn, those lucky scoundrels battle trait applies to that hero. You cannot carry out this heroic action with the same hero more than once in the same battle. Effectively, they get a second best day ever. They get their normal best day ever, and they get their those lucky scoundrels dayest ever, right? Where they can turn on all those previously referenced abilities. So
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, and then lastly, what I think will be the most controversial piece of design, because at first glance, I looked at this, like I just looked at it visually, before reading it, and I was like, oh, okay, so we have a table in here like Doc or IDK or somebody like that, right? We see it. There's plenty of armies that have, or even maybe Nurgle, if you think of that as like they're starting in a random place, but then every battle round something's happening, right? But it's this battle round. It's this sort of battle round exception, or battle round set of rules. And then I read it, and I was like, okay, this is working very differently than what I had expected. So first of all, there's no battle round 1 effect at all. Okay. Battle round 2, they're snacking. Okay. So you subtract 1 from run rolls. Subtract 1 from run rolls. Okay. They run slower because they're snacking. This is a penalty. I want to really drive this home to everybody. Okay. Round 3, their tum-tums are rumbling. Okay, so now they're subtracting 1 from run and charge. Round 4, they're straight up starving, right? Because these guys cannot miss a meal. Subtract 1 from run and charge rolls. These aren't cumulative, by the way. These are just replacement penalties, just to be super clear with everybody. It's not like we're suddenly at -2 to run and -2 to charge. It's just each one is replacing the last. Round 4, subtract 1 from run and charge rolls. In addition, this unit can move up to 1 inch when making, to a maximum of 1 inch when making a pile-in move. So now they pile in very small amount. And then finally, round 5, they've now gone from starving to hangry, and they add 1 to all wound rolls. In addition, you have the number of models, rounding any fractions down, that have been slain this turn when this unit makes a battle shock roll.
They've had enough.
They've just had enough. So the only actual benefit on this table, to be super clear with everybody, is in round 5. And then round 1 is just neutral because it's nothing, right? Round 2, 3, and 4, you're operating under a penalty. Again, there are ways to manipulate this. Of course, we're going to play with this. But just like, again, doing nothing else, this is the base. This is the most dangerous thing you wrote in this book. Okay.
Agreed. It's difficult to. It's something that's easy to forget as well. Unfortunately, isn't it? But I really wanted them to get tired as the game progresses. And annoyed. They want their dinner.
Sure. Yeah, just from a design perspective, like generally handing out negatives of any kind has sort of gone the way of the dodo. Right? You don't really see them. You don't see any kind of forced negatives. The closest thing is you see risk-reward stuff where it's like, well, you can choose to risk it for the biscuit here, sort of Skaven style, right? Where it's like you can overcharge this thing and like it may or may not be a good idea to do so, but if you get it, you get some big reward. This is just straight negative.
I wanted to do like a reverse of the Daughters of Cain chart. Obviously, they get better as the game progresses, and I wanted them to get worse. I wanted them to be good, in the first couple of turns, and then really bad, and then there'd be a strong recovery mechanism at the end for a heroic, crescendo.
Sure, absolutely.
I agree. You're right. This probably is the most controversial part of the allegiance abilities, but then the rest of them are very good, the allegiance abilities, so
sure.
Hopefully it balances it out a little, but I think the worst part of it is something that people are likely to forget. That's the real danger.
Tyler, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think practically that stands out the most to me, the potential of forgetting this stuff. If there were to be something potentially cut, this is the one. Like I said, I'm really looking at this for the first time. This stands out as potentially the one to change or cut, if that's a concern of a little too much bloat maybe. But I love the inclination though, right, of having a potential balancing mechanism with all of these other great allegiance abilities. Owen, how have you probably placed it? How have you found this in terms of playtesting?
I have to admit I haven't play tested loads, but yeah, definitely the idea that the complexity of everything, honestly, we haven't even got into all the scrolls.
Right.
Yeah, the potential for forgetting these little things with the clutch, those clutch turns. There is a fear that perhaps the excellent benefit of hangry on turn 5, by the time you get to that point, how many of your troops are left to be able to benefit from that excellent buff is a fear. I think maybe speaking plainly, probably I would find the -1 to pile in is massive on turn 4. And then those clutch turn 3 -1 to charge. If you're trying to mitigate a redeploy and you're going for a 9 with a reroll, making it a 10 with a reroll, often you without bonuses to charge and things, you put yourself at 9 rather than putting yourself at 7 to trigger the redeploy.
Right.
So then having to then roll that 10 is real hard mode. But then perhaps the elation that you feel when those lads roar in on a 12, on an 11, should I say, maybe from a play experience point of view, I don't know. I think it is a difficult one in terms of you normally look at a set of allegiance abilities and they inspire, whereas this makes you fear a little bit, which is maybe counter to the traditional experience of reading a Battletome. But I think overall in the round, there are plenty of ways to accentuate and make the other allegiance abilities better. Maybe does counter this in the long run. And I think that from Darren's point of view, this is bang on brand and it's bang on theme for the whole feel of the army. Yeah. So
yeah. So this book, my read of it is it's a Timmy Johnny book. Okay. Like absolutely that's what it is.
100%. Yeah, that's what it's looking like. Yeah.
Deeper than that, it's a Timmy book that was written by a Johnny. Okay. Like this is Johnny's perception of what Timmy wants. All right. And so like the only thing the thing that worries me here is not the mental load or the memory. I agree people will forget it, but people forget a bunch of rules, right? Like if that was the bar we had to cross, we'd strike Monsters Rampage from the game immediately because like
Sure.
Everybody forgets those every charge phase, right? Because they happen at like the worst time for your memory. They happen in between the two most exciting moments in the game. Successfully making a charge and then getting to swing your weapons and fight somebody. The whole reason you decided to play Warhammer. Those are the two highest peak like attention moments of both players in the round and in the valley of death of memory in between these two ultra high moments comes a Monsters Rampage, right? It's just you couldn't have designed something to be more forgettable. At any rate, so I'm not like super worried about that. I'm worried about it more from just the fact that Timmy generally hates penalties, right? Mm-hmm. And so knowing that he's actually driving into something that is going, like, that he has his own ability he has to play over the top of, like, to Johnny, this is a nothing. This is just, yeah, I'll play around it. Johnny loves abilities that are bad and negative and, like, ways that they have to list, build, and play around and crisscross, right? It's the classic one with nothing dilemma from Magic, right? Where there's a card you could play that just discards your entire hand. Like, that's all it did. You played the card and it made you discard your entire hand. It's like one of the worst cards ever if you just read it on its face, right? But Johnny was like, I love this card. I've got so many amazing things I can do with this. It's so cheap and fantastic, right? So that's my only actual concern. But yeah, I will be interested to see people's feedback on this. I'm certainly not the spokesperson for all Timmy. I'm only a member of this particular club. So we'll see. Okay. Let's move on and talk about some enhancements and command traits and all these sorts of things. All the fun. Okay. So there's a lot of these. As you mentioned, you started writing this in 2.0, and like the way you have it broken up with like 3 per hero type, right? So trail masters, head chefs, the sneaky dudes who I don't remember, but I like because I love sneaky dudes.
Thieves.
There you go, the trail thief. Sneaky Guy is my favorite hero, by the way. I love Sneaky Guy.
Oh, good. He's my favorite Warscroll too.
There you go. You did some really fun, interesting, creative design with Sneaky Guy. Tyler, you're gonna really find this design interesting and compelling when we get there. I promise. Like, there's a lot of interesting design going on in this book, Darren. But the trail thief, our little sneaky dude, he takes the cake. Okay.
Oh, I'm pleased.
All right. So I'm not gonna talk about all of these, but I do want to highlight because there's just it's a lot.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
We'll be here until forever. Okay. But I think it's interesting because what I do want to show people is how you're playing with the initial abilities and or granting new ones. So like I am going to go through just very quickly the Trailmaster ones because this is sort of your generic, traditional boss guy, right? Like every army has the traditional like combat utility general boss guy, right? This is the loon boss in Goblins and the Claw Lord in Skaven. That's your Trailmaster, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. So prized paunch, add 1 to his wounds characteristic, and if this model is affected by the dinner ability from Go With Your Gut, then add 1 to save rolls for this unit, right? So not only then with dinner, remember it with dinner, they're getting the 4+ ward when they're under the Lucky Scoundrels, but now he's also adding 1 to his save rolls. But that's being tied to you getting dinner. We'll talk more about that later. Trailblazer, after the army's been set up but before the first battle begins, D3 friendly Gnomad Feastmasters units can move up to 6 inches. Feels very in line with their whole Forge the Trail, skirmishy, mobile thing. absolutely appropriate. And then the champion Poulterer, wonderful. So absolutely. If you choose this unit to have a mount trait, then you can choose one extra mount trait for this unit. So you can give your little chicken, your war chicken, two mount traits. Sorry. Okay, so you can see kind of the stuff you're playing with there, right? These are what out of here do you love the most, or what out of here grabs your attention, Darren? What's the one you want, the stuff you want to highlight in the command traits section? You want to talk about some flaming cuisine because it's super fun.
From the others, or
yeah, we can go to the others as well. Yeah, from any of the four, because obviously there's four command trait ones.
I think the one that needs most attention from like a balance perspective potentially is the insect whisperer for the hedge hermit. If anyone is tempted to actually use these rules and do a bit of balance testing for me, because it allows nomad drovers, which is your infantry, or your nomad scouts, to throw a stone like the hedge hermit, and then there is a worry that actually becomes very, very good in a lucky turn, because suddenly your nomad drovers with bows have now got another shooting attack. So we've now got 2 attacks that potentially spike and get a mortal wound.
Sure.
So that's the one, and you can have nomad drovers, which is your basic infantry unit, in 15s, because I love that because it's chaotic. So you could have 45 of them. So all of a sudden that's 90 shots. So that potentially could be a bit powerful. But in order to have that, you would have to be outside of the trail. So you lose out on all those trail rules. So hopefully that might balance it. But I do love the idea of all these sort of insects gathering rounded stones and making sure that the drovers have got them. And it's funny thinking, an orc's dying because a little halfling's thrown a stone at it.
Yeah,
I like that imagery, and it goes back to Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. When they're hoying
tossing
stones.
rocks.
Yeah, exactly. So I enjoy that. I like you can have, as part of an enhancement, you can actually have a tree lord lead your forces. So there's a couple for those, and one of them is dense foliage. I just like the idea of that protects a hedge hermit that's nearby if we do get to the Warscrolls. I know time's getting on.
Oh no, we're good. We'll definitely get to the Warscrolls. Don't worry, we're doing this. We're here. We're in it to win it.
Oh well, as long as you're enjoying yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, you're good, man. You're good. We're gonna do it. I just want to keep it moving at a clip, because I know all of us are prone to long discussions, and this is all really interesting stuff. But no, we're not cutting this before we're done. We're gonna get this. We're gonna get through this, my friend.
I have one, Darren, and gang.
Please.
Because I obviously love Sylvaneth, my first army, and that's what I lean into when I build my lists for the Feastmasters. So one of the towering dispositions is Roots of Resurrection, which is those ancient oaks that have traversed the great forests of Gairan innumerable times, know the names of every tree, bush, and bracken, and how that manifests itself on the table is that if the general's on the battlefield, each time a Spirit of Durthu, a Tree Lord Ancient, or a Tree Lord is destroyed, before you remove it, you put a Guardian counter into the nearest terrain feature. And my list building and the way that I've been thinking about the book is all about getting as many Guardian counters out there as quickly as possible, because like a turn 1 Tree Lord can be a thing. But I also like the element of, the idea of the resurrection. So, as one mighty oak falls, then, an acorn or an element from it then seeps into the ground, and that's the nexus for the next tree lord to pop up. So that's one of the command traits I love.
I remember when you first read that, you messaged me a chef kiss emoji.
Oh really? That doesn't surprise me.
You really liked that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I see some places where, like, Rotund Disposition, there's one that says, Nomad Feastmasters unit affected by its Always Hangry ability. Is that referring to the It's Been a Long Day table? The Hangry effect?
Yeah. Exactly that. It's on the head chef Warscroll. When we get to it, they've got a way of, they're always hangry, and they've got a way of inspiring other people to feel that way, basically.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. Yeah.
Yep. The only other one I'll mention here is Flaming Cuisine under the head chef, which is this general and any Nomad Feastmasters unit affected by its Always Hangry ability, yes, can move an extra 1 inch when it runs or piles in. Very fun. Which is, I do like the visual there. Nothing will get you moving. Okay. Artifacts. Yet again here. So again, we're gonna, we're both gonna add new abilities, but also play with some of those core things. So, for example, the head chef. I do not know how to say that last word. I pulled the ripcord on that as I was about to read it because I was like, given my ability to pronounce things under the what is this word?
I think it's cloche.
Cloche.
I think in the do you know of the term like under the cosh? When you're under the cosh, I don't know if it's like a British thing, but you're kind of you're like when you're under the cosh, you're kind of you're in retreat or you're kind of in the defensive position. Whereas I believe then a cloche, is that not a Darren? Is that like a weapon? A kind of a bludgeon, a cloche?
Shout out here to Mark Wilson, who's responsible for turning my very basic ideas into a full narrative. So we've not got it here, but preceding these rules is almost as if not as much narrative as you'd get in a standard tome, and he also helped out with these namings here. We would need Mark to explain it.
That is a word right there. That is one I have not encountered. So there you go.
But I really love that. When I was growing up and I had like a Games Workshop new codex
100%.
or anything, I'm
100%.
super uneducated, but I can attribute the vast majority of my vocabulary to reading through Games Workshop.
To just the like role playing games and Warhammer and everything like that in general. Yes, absolutely. There you go. The die is cast. A cloche is a cover for plates used in serving. Well, thank you very much. The die is cast.
Narrative. See, Mark's our man.
Very nice.
Under the cloche, yes, and then it's a play on words with cosh. Okay, interesting. Cool.
Okay. So, Nomad Feastmasters units wholly within 12 of the bearer are not affected by the It's Been a Long Day battle trait, meaning that you don't suffer the negative penalties to run or charge or potentially pile in if you're near this particular head chef who has this artifact. So, yeah, fun stuff. Anything? What would you guys like to? What of these, if any of them, do you want to call out?
I like So I did the vast majority of the blurbs throughout the tome, but I was always super worried that my English is terrible. But one of the descriptions I'm pretty proud of is the Stonebane sash.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got like the old, it means, the garb, when Frodo gets stabbed by that mithril silver sort of protection.
Well, he gets stabbed by, he gets stabbed specifically by a troll, by the cave troll, but he's wearing mithril armor, yes.
Yeah, so it's sort of based on that, but I really like the blurb, but I can't, because I've got it up there and I can't quite remember it from...
Stonebane weed can undermine even the sturdiest Duarden fortification if left unchecked. A skilled hand can fashion the roots into a lightweight protective garb.
I was very pleased with that one. Just... And it means that they can only ever take one wound at a time, basically. That's my favourite artifact.
Reduce the damage inflicted by each successful attack that targets the bearer to 1. Mini Gotrek head Hermit over here. That dude is ready to go. Okay.
He's only got 4 wounds, mind you. So.
Yeah, sure. He's not quite the same level of toughness. Yeah, indeed. Okay. So there's just a lot of fun stuff here. The Gyratian Beacon is also another interesting. Like the Hedge Hermits are all interesting. They're weaker heroes, but they do have interesting stuff around them. So after territories have been chosen, but before armies are set up, select a terrain feature within your territory and add a Guardian counter to it. Just speaking back to the thing you were talking about, Owen, like going for that summoning strategy to get some more tree people out there, right? Waking up those woods early.
Yep, getting those counters out there early. You've allowed me to segue into something which I'm sure Tyler will love as a player of Durthu, I'm sure, in the past. So one of Gairan's bounties is a Spirit of Durthu, or a Tree Lord Ancient, but that's not part of the conversation. Spirit of Durthu, if he takes the Aurora Fauna, you select one of the bearers melee. Oh no, I thought it was melee and it's missile.
That's missile weapons, yes.
I thought I was going to give him a 6-inch Guardian sword. 6-inch range Guardian sword. Oh, disaster. Okay, I'll have to retract on that one. I thought that was going to be +1 to hit. I need to read the rules.
It's okay. What you want is the stem anchor. Because the bearer always counts as being wholly within 8 inches of a friendly awakened wildwood for the purposes of its Wrathful Guardian ability. Once per battle in your movement phase, you can remove the bearer from the battlefield and set it up again anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches from enemy units. So it can still act very much like it would in that Spirit of Earth can act like it would in a sort of optimal Sylvaneth situation. So there you go.
Yes.
Yeah, that I had to change this. I showed Simon Weekly the tome sort of early on to get some feedback from a genius, I would consider in sort of competitive play. And originally it was you always count as within 6 inches of a wildwood. So he was like, so I can just teleport wherever I want all the time. I was like, no, that's not quite what I was trying to achieve. So I had to change it somewhat. Luckily, before it got printed.
The Tellus Blade is actually really nice, as Cabbage has said in the chat, because with the fact that the monstrous action to fight at top bracket's gone away, the Tellus Blade will allow Durthu to be flat damage 6 all the time, which is nice. We love that. So yeah, there's loads of fun stuff in there. It's the kind of Build-A-Bear, you can do what you want with your chosen,
I mean, I appreciate all of this, okay? But I'm here for sneaky guys stuff. Like, I didn't get into halflings to play with trees. Like, I appreciate the narrative, but I got into it for the short guys, okay? So, and I like both the Adventurers map and the Forager's Veil, but neither of their abilities are going to make a ton of sense until we talk about the actual sneaky guy himself.
We'll revisit them, Vince. We'll revisit them.
Yep.
After we've gone through the trail feed.
The important part here is the Forager's Veil lets you actually keep the model in reserve, and then he pops up, but he can pop up like really close, like, hey, what's up? I've been here the whole time. And the Adventurers map makes it a lot more likely that you're going to succeed on your mission. I love Mission Impossible halflings, so there we go. Okay. Let's get down to some mount traits real quick. So we've got one for the Trailmaster and one for the War Caravans. So your War Chicken Rider and your basically your caravan. The one of these can sort of boost your war lance up in an interesting way, your mount up in an interesting way, and your lance, which is interesting.
No, it actually makes your lance worse because you're desperately trying to.
That's right. Yes, it is a 5-up. Yeah, it's the mount that gets better, but you get worse. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you're right.
You're desperately trying to hold on. You see, I think that's what
Yeah, that's cool.
And then you can turn one of your war caravans into a monster with Gyranic Conduit. I thought that one was very interesting. All right. But, I mean, really, I think the one people are going to love is the Dissidence Hives, which is roll a dice each time an enemy unit attempts to carry out a monstrous rampage or perform a heroic action within range of this model's Alembic Shroud, which, just for this little caravan that scoots around the board has a range of 12 inches around it. Think of it like the bonus buff from like a Luminarch or anything like that. And so it starts at like 12 inches as its bubble, and it shrinks as the thing gets damaged. And so it's a pretty decent sized radius around this model. And on a 4-up, the enemy unit cannot carry out that monstrous action or perform that heroic action, respectively. So quite strong, stopping roar, stopping potential stomps, and of course enemy hero healing being pretty good. So yeah,
stopping Beasts of Chaos summoning D3 points.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yep.
What a monstrous reaction! Who decided to do that? Good grief!
It's pretty strong. It's pretty strong. Okay. Then we've got our spell lore. So I'm going to throw straight to you guys on this one. Darren, what's your favorite spell out of the list?
9 landscape, the first one. It increases the effects of a scenery piece by 6 inches. There's a lot of things that sort of interact with scenery throughout the tome. Like that's a way of getting your summoned tree lords deeper into your opponents, let's say. Or if you've got like a bit of deadly terrain in your enemy's deployment, you can make that, you know, a much bigger. It actually has an effect on the game then, right? Suddenly it's not 1 inch from the piece of scenery, but it's, you know, 7 inches from the piece of scenery. So these pieces of terrain are actually being used. And it gives your nomads a bit more cover. Again, it's a way of getting, if you've got a load of towers all the way around the board, it's a way of getting an area of cover for your little dudes basically to run onto. But I just think it's just a simple idea that you can play around with a lot. You know, there's lots of different things you can do with create. You can make your faction scenery better when we get onto that, for example. Yeah, it's my favourite one.
Okay. Owen, are you a Guardian of Gyran guy?
You read it in one there, Vince. You read it in one. I am a Guardian of Gyran guy. Also, Leaves of Empathy needs a shout out. But yeah, Guardian of Gyran, casting value of 5. If successfully cast, select a terrain feature within 12 inches of the caster and add a Guardian counter to it. So yes, let's get that engine going. So yeah, it's another way of getting those Guardian counters into terrain. And yeah, if I may, then Leaves of Empathy is excellent. There's a way of getting some pluses to cast with some certain characters. And until the start of your next hero phase, all friendly units wholly within 12 inches of the caster gain the Gnomad Feastmasters keyword until the start of your next hero phase. In addition, any last meals eaten by the caster for the Go With Your Gut affect all friendly Gnomad Feastmasters and friendly units wholly within 12. So just going to cast out a big bubble. So yeah, giving your tree lords and stuff the Gnomad Feastmasters keyword, maybe over the course of a double turn, getting some wards, getting some mortals, feels good, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so those are my 2 hot picks.
I really wanted the lore to feel again like Gyran was helping, you know,
right.
The nomads. I didn't want it to be a destructive lore. I didn't want it to be a lot of D3 or D6 damage. It should really buff the armies, and or debuff the sort of enemy. And again, that's why that's super important in the Lucky Scoundrels, that you've got this denial of multiplying or changing or modifying the dice rolls, because they need to be able to get these spells through, probably to to succeed.
Yep.
And there's not a lot of bonuses in the book. Again, I didn't want to fill the book with loads of bonuses to cast like you see elsewhere.
Sure. And we should give along that route, we should give a special shout out to Auspicious Tidings, casting value of 6. You get to select a friendly Nomad Feastmasters unit within 6 inches of the caster, so it has to be pretty close. But it's just a within, not wholly within. And or within 6 inches of a gastronome encampment, which is your terrain feature you get with the army. Until your next hero phase, apply those Lucky Scoundrels battle trait to this unit. So you can basically those Lucky Scoundrels them sort of out of turn, or I suppose would be the answer. Like when it's not actually a double turn. Okay. All right. Nomad Trail. Okay. No meat. Thank you.
Nomiad.
Yes. Okay, so basically we're in our sub-factions. Now, I should state these are written as per like the 2.0 sub-factions, so they have abilities, command traits, artifacts, the whole deal. Okay. So they're written like the old thing. So do you want to, instead what I'm going to do is, rather, because it's a lot of text, I don't want to read it all. I want you to just sum up what this thing's about for me. So the Nomiad Trail, what's this one about?
I'll just say very briefly why they are like this, because this is an important point I want to make for sort of Age of Sigmar. So these were written a little while ago, and the decision not to change them is because when you just have like one rule per sub-faction, for me it destroys a lot of the character. And when early 3 tomes came out, they had this sort of design, and it meant that all the value then was on the Warscrolls, and it was no longer in the sub-factions. And this is why we saw so many spammed armies of dragons or whatever, because why would you not take the most efficient Warscroll if there was no way of,
Yeah,
no need to do anything else?
Nurgle
so
really
this is what
has this problem. Nurgle in particular, man, I've noticed playing a lot of Nurgle, they don't have a sub-faction for building a diverse army. Building a, like, I love obviously armies that you've got 9 or 10 different war scrolls. Nurgle Battletome does not remotely incentivize you to do that. It's spam flies or spam plague bearers or etc. Yeah, it drives me crazy. Anyway, you're
This
right.
is why we made the decision to keep it this way. This is the trail. This is the original trails from Gyron. You know, this is all the power is, all the closest ties to the seedling Kinar, which is the Sylvaneth and their Tree Lord protectors. So in summary, I wanted to put some things that were unique to this tome in, because there's not a lot of design space within Age of Sigmar left. And here's a sort of an example of one of those. It's the first time I think you can use 2 command points to do something. So you can spend a command point, and it allows you to gain a Guardian token. And if we attribute command points to about 50 points roughly, because that's what they used to be way back when, 2 is about 100 points, and you need 3 to get a Tree Lord, so that's about 300 points. So it makes a bit of sense, hopefully. And then if you've got any Tree Lords in your army and you use the Silent Communion ability from them, then those trees come with a Guardian token as well. And then basically the item is a healing item that gets better if you're Holy Honor within a terrain feature. And what's the command trait? I can't, again.
The command trait is the fact that you, once per hero phase, if the general is Holy Honor within a terrain feature, it may use Enthralled Landscape, which is essentially after they've cast a spell, they can cast an additional spell, even if they don't know it, and they get +1 to cast to it. So it gives them a bit of extra magical.
Drawing on
Yeah.
nature's power, basically. They're building on their momentum. But the important thing there is you have to get the cast off. So it's not always going to be sort of an extra cast.
Yeah, exactly. Cast a spell, and then you get to cast another one at +1. And then there are 2 things again. There's in this sub-faction, you can summon Spirits of Durthu as well as, instead of a Tree Lord or a Tree Lord Ancient. It costs 4 Guardian counters rather than 3, but you can bring on a Durthu. And then also you've got the Expert Hitches. So you're allowed. Don't apologise, Darren. There's a lot to remember. This is the fun bit. So you can garrison up to 16 barefoot models inside a Tree Lord Ancient or a Durthu or a Tree Lord. And then, so essentially a unit of 15 troops and perhaps a small hero. They can climb into the bows and then march forward with their Tree Lord Protector, much like a Caradron Overlord boat would garrison some troops. So,
That's so good. I love that.
Yep.
I like the
really
imagery.
fun.
Like it just shows you the size of these trees, right? That they've got some dudes on them. So yeah, it represents the power of Gyron, basically. This trail.
Yes, I love this one for expert hitchers. That was the thing that jumped out at me. I was like, heck yeah, I want to put a bunch of little dudes hanging off that tree. It's awesome. Okay. Current Trail or Curray. I'm not sure which the pronunciation there would be. So who wants to walk me through this one?
I think it's curate. I think it's a Romanian gypsy word for savage, and this is the trail that runs through Gur. So the trails themselves were never supposed to go into any other places other than Gyron, and it does explain why later on. So these are the trails that run through Gur, and here the nomads have started to interact with ogres, and obviously there's this food connection that you were sort of alluding to earlier.
Yep.
So the biggest part of this, again going back to like something that's a bit more unique from other tomes, this is the first time I think we've seen sort of faction sort of crossovers. So you can have an order army coalitioning in destruction units. So 1 in 4 of your
Other
units.
than like the mercenary Sons of Batman, sure. But
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. So we can have the foot infantry ogres in you, and the new ogre tome's just come out. So that tome hopefully might have made Nomad Feastmasters better as well. But 1 in 4 of your units can be a butcher, a fire belly, guttons, man eaters. I love the opportunity for the conversion to make like a man eater nomad.
sure. Get that big chef hat on him.
Hunters, and I think the
Frost
Frost sabers.
Oh, and fire bellies. Did I say fire bellies? So those. And again, you can. There's a way of making your butcher the general in your army, and if you do that, you get fancy pallets or sophisticated pallets. I can't quite remember the command trait, but that gives
where all the ogre units gain the Nomad Feastmasters keyword. Yep.
Exactly that. So now we've got, you lose the allegiance abilities of the more tribes, but you gain the Nomad Feastmasters one. So there's lots of fun things I think you can do with like man eaters, making them lucky, making them hangry, making them retreat and still shoot and stuff like that. So I think this is quite a fun one for me. But there are some restrictions. You lose the ties to Gyron. So although you can still call for aid and you can still cast spells to get Guardian tokens, you can't start with Tree Lords within your army. You lose Towering Allies as an allegiance ability.
Very nice.
That's
okay.
cool.
And then, of course, a thing that'll make more sense in a moment as well here. That's actually a pretty potent ability is the head chef units using their always hangry ability may select 2 additional Nomad Feastmasters units to be hangry. So
I like this here because, like in the lore, the head chefs are the busiest of the nomads because obviously they've got to keep everyone else fed, so they're the ones that eat last. So basically, they're always annoyed. And here, they've got to keep ogres from eating.
It's a lot of craft
Really
services.
angry.
Is a rough life. Yeah, no doubt. Okay, and then lastly, the Blazed Trail. So take us through this one.
So the Blaze Trail is the most recent trail to sort of form, and it's the one where the nomads have got the closest ties to the sort of cities of Sigmar. Basically, they consider Sigmar the great betrayer in the lore, but by necessity, the trails within Akshai are so dangerous that they have to interact with the people around them. Just to give you a little bit of background, and then the Blaze Trail, you can't have any towering allies. This is the one where this is the richest caravan, so you can have an extra caravan in your army, basically an extra Blaze Trail Behemoth. Is that Behemoth? Is that how you pronounce
Yes.
it? Basically, you get an interesting way of using their command trait and their sort of allegiance ability. So if you lose the roll off, you gain a command point, and then for their command ability, you can choose to immediately spend that, and if you can either shoot or fight in combat if you're within 3 inches of the enemy, as if you were affected by those lucky scoundrels. So that's quite a strong ability, but you only get it when your opponent beats you in the roll off, basically. And I wanted to. This is another example of how I wanted the game to feel like it was on the nomads sort of side. There's this omnipresent protection of Gyran, hopefully running throughout. But how do you represent that in gaming terms? So here it's like there's a lot of rules that play around with priority, and it heavily favours the nomads, and that's. When your opponent wins a roll-off, they might be thinking, "Oh, piss! he's gonna be able to shoot me now." So that's the reason for that.
Nice.
And then there's a couple of other abilities there. I think the Eubetic Cowl, which means again, if your opponent wins a roll-off, you can move that character 6 inches, so you can get out. You can get out of dodge. That's kind of like a the One Ring, basically. He disappears and moves, basically.
Sure, just get out of there. Yep. No, I
I think there's one really strong ability within the Blaze Trail that you haven't referenced, which is...
Oh, sorry, there is.
No. Just the fact that because it's very caravan-centric, units garrisoned within the caravans can get out after it's moved, which is really strong, I think, for
cool.
objective play. and you get +1 to the attack's characteristic of weapons carried by units that leave the garrison using that ability until the start of your next hero phase. And also models inside the garrison are counted towards the control of the objective. So yeah, I think that's, especially if you imagine you've got maybe a load of expert conquerors inside one of those caravans.
Yeah, this is something that might need toning down a bit, because potentially you've got model strength of 5 for the caravan, 16 dudes inside, 15 of them have got expert conquerors, so you could count as 51 an objective. Now, I love the fact that this little caravan can waltz up to an objective and take it off of a mega gargant. I think that's hilarious. but in terms of gaming mechanics, perhaps we need to tone that down a bit, basically. Again, this was written before 3.
Sure.
However it is, so
Sure.
that is something. But it might not. I don't want to just assume that something.
No, yeah, let it play out, see how it goes. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. You've got some match play, grand strategies, and battle tactics, as well as some unique enhancements for when you're allowed to use those unique enhancements. I'm not going to focus too much on this stuff, because it's not ancillary, but it's certainly part of the book overall. But there's interesting options that this does open up. Specifically, if you're using, like, you want to use a Trio at Ancient Spear to do with your Butcher as your general, even though they're a coalition unit, or one allied Cities of Sigmar unit may replace all the Cities of Sigmar keywords with Gnomad Feastmaster keywords, or getting 2 additional reinforcement points. All playing with the fundamentals of the army, basically, right? So
I love this building. You write what you love, right? And hopefully that opens up loads of options.
Yeah, and you can see the list building stuff that's going on here with all 3 of these, right? So they're all, like, I do want to impress upon people that if list building is something that's really interesting to you and you want to be able to play around with these different interesting mixes of models, that is very much what this book delivers, right? Between the nomads themselves and then the Sylvaneth, the ogres, the cities, or just expanding and actually that reinforcement point rule should exist in, like, Skavens, and should exist in Goblin and stuff like that. Like, it's nonsense that those armies are operating under the standard thing.
I used to think Nighthaunt, but no longer, because they're cooked anyway.
Right, exactly. They're fine. I'm gonna skip the core battalions for a moment, just because it's gonna reference a lot of the units, and we won't.
Can you show them, though, because that's my favourite bit of Owen's design. Like,
did Owen do these? Well, then I don't want to skip them by. Yes. All of your little icons are great. I will say that. These are really great.
Oh, I love that. This is my favourite page in all of the rules. Like, this is it just feels so GW. I love it.
Yep.
Thank you, Owen.
And once again, this is where you can see, like, abundance and pragmatism over pride. So the general can be a Tree Lord, Ancient Spear, do through a Butcher, even if they're a coalition unit, and so on and so forth. This stuff showing in here. So. Okay, very good. But I don't want to talk about combinations of units till people understand the units. So let's talk about the units, shall we? Let's talk Warscrolls. It's time.
Woohoo!
Okay. All right.
How long do your Battletome reviews normally go on for, Vince?
It varies highly. It depends on the size of the book, We're doing all right. We're doing all right. Okay. Trailmaster on Warcockerel. I need to scoot this down just slightly. Okay. It might be too much, but that's all right. Here, we'll do this. Let's do 88. There we go. Okay, that should be better. I want to make sure people can read it, but I want to show the cool layout and art and everything, but there's always the fight between having the text big enough for people to read and being able to see the whole thing. All right. So if I was a smart boy, I would have printed out the points page and had that separate to reference. I wasn't. I'm sorry. So if one of you has the points page handy and can give the points as we talk about these guys.
I can be
awesome.
that guy.
So the Trailmaster on Warcockerel, obviously he is he's stout and Trailmaster keywords. He's a hero and he's a monster. 11 wound hero, 4 up save. And as you can see from his attack profile, not the scariest guy. This is where we talked about, we've got all these allegiance abilities and ways to modify these things. and now that comes home to roost.
You went there. Yeah.
So, and that is because obviously the individual war scrolls are as I said earlier, like the power doesn't come from the scroll itself, right? Like in the end, this dude does not do a lot of damage. You see a lot of like 3s to hit, 4s to wound, a lot of 4s to wound in this book, stuff like that. Not a lot of rend here, so on and so forth. The other thing that is still here, and I'm curious as to your take on this. You still kept command abilities on a lot of the individual heroes. Obviously, that's something that's largely gone away in 3.0 design, but most of these guys still have command abilities. Not all, but most. So what's your kind of general sense there?
These command abilities are sort of integral to that idea that they all need to fight together and they need to synergize. If we take them away, we lose that. We lose that sort of narrative. And I'm not a massive fan of the sort of, certainly at the beginning of 3, I really didn't like list building. It was so boring. Like I stopped doing Darren's list diaries, for example, which is something I used to do on the Honest Wargamer with Rob. But like creating lists was just boring with some of the new tomes. So this is you write what you love, and this is what this type of scroll is what I love. So that's why we kept it like that.
So now let's talk about this guy's. I mean, this guy's got some stuff you'd expect, like his lance is better on the charge and things like that. But the things that are interesting to me are Fortune favors the brave. Add 1 to ward rolls when you're using those Lucky Scoundrels ability if this model made a charge move. So in the turn where he's using those Lucky Scoundrels, you get to his ward improves. As long as he charged. So, encouraging you to get out there and play. That's the whole thing. Like you're on when you get the double turn, you should be out there, you should be moving, you should be fighting. Here you go. This is the benefit to do it.
Yeah.
Extra provisions in a turn where you lose the roll off to determine who can take the first turn in each battle round. You can say this model is handing out extra provisions. All friendly Gnomad Feastmasters units within 3 inches of this model may treat this round as battle round 1 for the purposes of It's Been a Long Day. Erasing penalties because he hands out some mid-game snacks.
Yes.
And
this is a rule that Matthew Hinton added, and I liked it so much that I kept it. So just shout out to Matthew Hinton. Thank you. He's one of the guys that helped us playtest them.
It's great. And then, yes, Cock-a-doodle-doo, which is your command ability. You can use it during your hero phase. If you do so, select a model with this command ability until the start of your next phase. All friendly Gnomad Feastmaster units wholly within 12 of the selected model gain the breakfast ability from the Go With Your Gut trait in addition to any other last meal eaten ability. So again, playing with that base rule. So now, which could counter the penalty if you rolled dinner, because you'd have +3, -3, and +1, -1, so you could set yourself back to neutral or whatnot while still maintaining the better ward and so on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just like the fact that this chicken's gone cock-a-doodle-doo and everyone thinks it's breakfast.
And he is 200 points, Vince.
Very nice. Okay, there we go. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Tyler, any thoughts on the Trailmaster here? Anything that jumps out at you?
Yeah, it looks pretty solid. I mean, yeah, I'm loving most of this stuff so far. Like, just pretty blown away by the amount of thought that's gone into it, work that's gone into it. It really shows, guys. It's
good. Because
it's pretty sweet. Yeah, it's really impressive.
And the scroll feels right on for that points cost. 11 wounds, base 4-up save. Again, we're not talking about some guy that's like rolling in here with 14 wounds on a 3-up or something like that, coming in with all this high rend. That's not the thing. That's not the thing here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's as hard as a nomad gets, and you can see he's not threatening Archaon anytime soon, is he?
Right.
Unless loads of buffs happen, Okay.
The War Caravan. So here's our caravans. 14 wounds and a 4-up save. The important part really here, they have, a set of different attacks. This is the first time we'll see prodigious horns, but not the last, as there are many of these rams pulling the nomads stuff around. But again, even with the prodigious horns, even with their mount, and sort of oftentimes the monster mount on a lot of these things like this is the scarier part. Here it's still, it's 6 attacks, but it's still on a 4s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 damage, right? We're not Yeah, we're not.
Snacker, do you see the size of that caravan?
We're not shaking the world here, right? But the important part here is the Alembic Shroud and the associated Alembic Overload. So, anybody, your Nomad Feastmaster models within range of the Alembic Shroud move, they can pass across terrain features in the same manner as a model that can fly. Which is really nice, because one of the questions you may have very well had is, well, gee, Darren, you've told me I want to go walk all over and be on terrain, but a lot of terrain is really movement intensive to walk around and on if I have to, like, pay okay to go up here and then down and then up this other side, and, you know, like, oh, geez, it's going to be a problem. But no, this little centerpiece here, this little buff piece, this little literal buff wagon, I suppose, makes it so they can easily move around that terrain. In addition, friendly Nomad Feastmasters units wholly within range of this model's Alembic Shroud count as being wholly on or within a terrain feature. In addition, do not apply the cover modifier to save rolls for attacks that target enemy units that are within range of this model's Alembic Shroud. It removes the cover benefit for your enemies because you're the masters of being on terrain. So doing a lot of stuff there. A lot of fun.
The magic of the trails is in the narrative. Like, we've got to explain how these caravans can traverse Gyron and Gur and everything. So they've got Habenka blessed timbers that manipulate terrain, basically, and they as they go, they sort of generate the magical veil of the trail. So it for me, it solves that solution of how they can negotiate terrain, and, you know, gaming wise, it works as well. We need mobile terrain for the nomads to function, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Fine.
And then we get the Alembic Overload. This model may fire its Alembic Overload at a visible terrain feature within range or at an enemy unit within range of this model's Alembic Overload. If an attack with an Alembic Overload hits, which is just on a 3-up, and then the rest is stars, then roll a dice for each enemy model within 1 inch of that terrain feature, or each model wholly within range of the model's Alembic Overload. For each roll of a 6, the model's unit suffers 1 mortal wound or 2 mortal wounds if the model is affected by those lucky scoundrels. If this model is affected by it. So, yeah, they have a little mortal wound gun.
Mm-hmm. Again, the terrain's shaking.
Yeah, love it. They have a little leaping headbutt where the little prodigious horns, if they charge, or sorry, it's just all the time. I apologize. Yes, if they roll a 6 to hit, then they do a little mortal wound.
I remember writing it that when they charge. So that's something that I don't know what happened. I don't know why that changed, but it should definitely be why they charge when they charge, shouldn't it? It might be something I'll change. But on a 6,
it was what my brain wanted it to be, but it isn't. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's right.
No, I agree. On the charge, they should do mortal wounds. The Gastronome Guard, which are a bit later, have got the same problem. But that's something for the final version, I think.
Writing it down now, Darren. Don't worry.
Yeah. I didn't want to bother you before, Owen. I'd bothered you with that.
Don't worry. It's all
Get
good.
that way.
And then finally, importantly, ground transport. This model may be garrisoned by up to 16 friendly, unmounted, barefoot models that are not a war machine, even though it's not a terrain feature. Units can be set up as this model's garrison when they are selected to deploy. They can't leave if the thing itself has moved, although it can move after they de-garrison. And an attack made by a weapon that's in range of this model can target either this model or the people in the garrison. So basically, like a KO boat is the easiest way to explain it. There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. Very cool.
220 and the only behemoth in the army.
There it is. Yes, the only, and a totem.
Indeed.
Iron flows through the Habenka blessed timbers of the war caravan.
All right.
One thing you didn't mention there actually is
sure.
the attack profile. Sorry, with the murder holes. I believe that there's a reasonable amount of attacks there, isn't there?
You can have 15 attacks, but they're a bit rubbish. But if you have murder holes, which is one of the unique enhancements, the Nomad Tinkers, you can make the people inside fight as if they had Rabble Oomph, which is an ability you'll see on the Drover the Drover War Scroll when we get to it. So you can make the guys inside fight more effectively with murder holes, basically.
Very nice. Okay. Good stuff. Gastronome Guard. Here's our little ram mounted halflings. I love this model, by the way, that was selected for this. Like that really does tell you the prodigious horns. That really sells the prodigious horns thing.
Pyromancer Dan once again did these. They're when I saw them, I was blown away. I loved them so much.
So these guys are 8-inch move, 3 wounds with a 5-up save. They've got little spears and little prodigious horns, but again, no, not shaking the world here. This is the first part, though, where we get to a very interesting ability you have on a couple different units. So they, because they have a champion and sort of banner and musician, like always, or whatever. But their musician, I guess, equivalent, the loudmouth, who shows up in a couple of different places. 1 in every 5 models can be a loudmouth. Well, this unit includes any loudmouths. During the charge phase, roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to this unit. On a 3+, that wound or mortal wound is negated. It's a very powerful ward that's only in the charge phase, right?
Yes. They scurry away.
Yeah, it's... Well, and I thought of it in all sorts of ways. Like, if you charge onto deadly terrain or something and take mortal wounds, you could ignore it. If somebody tries to stomp you in the charge phase, you can ignore it, right? There's like a bunch of interesting things that are happening there when that ward is triggering for. But it's very, very specific, that ward save.
Unleash Hell, perhaps? Those
Yep.
speedy ibex weaving in and out of the arrows, Matrix style, dodging,
Absolutely.
weaving.
Yeah, like going into Sentinels, suddenly a lot less scary for these little dudes. They're in. They're ready to go.
I love counterplay, so.
Okay. They can always move across terrain as though they can fly because they're goats, and that's what goats do. Goats run up and down mountains, so it's no problem. You get to double the attacks characteristic for the prodigious horns if this unit is wholly on or within a terrain feature. And if the hit roll for an attack made by this unit's prodigious horns is 6, it's a mortal wound in addition, just like the other one.
Yeah, so we should change that.
And they are 140 for 5, and battle line if you're in the Blaze Trail and your general has the stout keyword.
There you go. Very nice. Okay, so this next guy is a special character, a named character, a unique character, right? Mephisto Heartstock. Okay, I'll take my shot at it. Tell me why you wanted to include. And by the way, he's a head chef. He's a named head chef. Tell me about why you wanted to include a named head chef and what was the motivation here with this dude? Where'd this guy come from?
So I just see, Mephisto on Twitter.
Sure. Yes, of course.
He does a wonderful stream every year, his charity event. And I just remember reading up about that. And it's like a little nod to him, basically. Because there's a few Easter eggs throughout the tome. Like you may have noticed the Tree Lord's name. Hopefully we'll get there and it'll drop if you haven't. So it was just like a little... I want to immortalise you in my tome. I think what you do is really cool. And we should definitely have a head chef as a named character. Right, that's absolutely. So this is the most, this is the best of the best head chef, and
Very nice. So we're gonna see.
Also,
go ahead, Owen, please.
Sorry, I was just going to say, in terms of the keywords, the only priest in the potential to bring.
I will be honest, I didn't catch that. So there you go. Okay.
The head chefs are they don't write anything down. The nomads, they've got no time for that, so they keep their stories alive through their recipes and through their great feasts. When a nomad eats, this is part of the narrative, but when they eat a great feast, they can feel the memories of past generations, basically, and it's the head chef's responsibility to keep those sacred recipes, and Mephisto Heartstock obviously has the best recipes.
Very nice.
That's why
All
they're
right.
the priest.
So I want to jump to the head chef because it'll be interesting to see his baseline and then come back to the other guy to kind of compare his extra stuff, right? Because the head chef and the hot pot are sort of innately linked for obvious reasons, right? So let's look at the generic head chef first. also a priest, and these are 5 wound models with a 6-up save, 4-inch move. Again, we're not blowing the doors off anything here. Their attacks, nothing to write home about. They're a pure utility hero. So I'm actually going to bring up the hot pot. That way we can just reference both of these at once. Waste not, want not. The please sir, may I have some more ability of the Nomad hot pot units within 3 inches of this model affects any Gnomad Feastmasters units wholly within 18 of that model except for other hot pots. So then that raises the obvious question of, okay, what does please sir, may I have some more do? Let's look down here at the hot pot. Of course we have a hot pot. AOS coach was calling out for the hot pot earlier. Don't worry, buddy, it's here. So the please sir, may I have some more. Any last meals eaten by the Nomad hot pot from the go with your gut trait affect any Nomad Feastmasters units wholly within 12 of this model except for other Nomad hot pot units. So explain the interaction here for everybody. Okay.
So there's several ways. I mean, if you go further on into the head chef, you'll see there's other ways of manipulating the last meal's eating. The hot pots themselves, I'm imagining them as they're like a debuff piece to the enemy, but they buff nomads around them because if different smells are emanating, then their metabolisms are triggered. So if an ability has changed the meal that's being prepared in these pots, and that's going to affect the other nomads around so it's another way of getting like perhaps a lunch and a dinner, or a dinner and a breakfast, affecting the same the same sort of area of the battlefield, basically.
Yep. Okay. Very good. And then obviously the head chef takes it and expands out the range. So it goes from wholly within 12 to wholly within 18. Now we've got a bigger area. Obviously what the hot pot does is it throws leftovers, of course, because that's what it does. And any unit hit by the leftovers is affected by one of the following abilities until the start of your next hero phase, depending on the last meals eaten by the Nomad hot pot from the go with your gut trait. So again, breakfast, lunch, or dinner is going to do different things to them based on what their last meal is. Breakfast, subtract 2 from the move characteristic for the unit and subtract 2 from that unit's run and charge rolls. Crippling penalty to hit the unit with. I mean, obviously that's a huge debuff. Lunch, subtract 1 from wound rolls, and dinner, subtract 1 from the save characteristic of that unit. The same unit cannot suffer from each of breakfast, lunch, or dinner more than once in the same turn. So you can't just pile up hot pots and start smacking them with multiple extra dinners and get their save down by 5 or something. Yes. And then as well, any unit hit by leftovers suffers D3 mortal wounds. Sorry, go ahead, Owen.
I was just saying they're not Nighthaunt.
Right. No stacking penalties. Yes, absolutely.
No stacking.
Well, this affects Nighthaunt because you're not modifying the save; you're changing the save. That's the hope there.
Yes, I should say this is actually subtracting 1 from the save characteristic of that unit. Yes.
And again, that means that you're not, because there's not a lot of rend for the halflings themselves. So this is a nice way of getting damage through that you might not have got through, because someone that starts on a base save of 5+ goes to a 4. If they all out defense, they can only ever get to a 4. They can't get to a 3. I quite like that. It's an important distinction.
Yep. Okay, now let's return back to the head chef. So this unit always counts as being hangry instead of the normal ability under It's Been a Long Day, as we referenced earlier. So this is where that comes back into focus there. Tyler, you had asked about this, right?
Right.
So they're always hangry, right? Effectively getting that round 5 ability. In addition, in your hero phase, you may select a Nomad Feastmasters unit within 3 inches of this unit. Until the start of your next hero phase, the selected unit counts as hangry instead of the normal ability under It's Been a Long Day. And again, could be modified, as we talked about before, with the previous ability, just being able to select 3 units total and turn them all hangry. So there we go. And then finally, there'll be some fine dining should you survive this one, lads. You can use this command ability during your hero phase. If you do so, select a Nomad Feastmasters unit wholly within 12 of a model with this command ability. Until the start of your next hero phase, replace the last meal eaten from the go with your gut trait for the selected unit with another last meal eaten of your choice. So if you want to move somebody from dinner to breakfast or breakfast to lunch or whatever, you can just scoot them around until your next hero phase. So There we
Yeah,
go.
I think they're quite important little heroes. And again, if they were just shot off straight away with their 5 wounds and no save, you wouldn't get to do all these fun things.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Owen. What's our point count on the head chef and the hot pot?
So head chef is 100 points. Mephisto Heartstock will set you back 20 points more at 120, and our hot pot is coming in at 140 and is obviously an artillery piece.
There you go.
Where Mephisto differs, he's able to add for one turn only for one hot pot. He can add a meal to that hot pot, so you can have 2 effects on the hot pot for one turn. And he's got that's one spicy meatball as as an ability. That's hot pots within 3 inches in a lucky turn do D6 mortal wounds instead of D3 mortal wounds. So he just
There you
really
go.
improves the hot pots.
Very nice.
Is that the right sort? 20 points? Do you think that's right? I mean, how are we doing points wise?
You all feel it all feels quite dead on. Yeah, absolutely. Like
good.
you look at that and you say 140. It's not. You're like, wow, for 6 wounds and a 5-up save. But at the same time, it's like, yes, that's a pretty potent debuff that thing is going to throw out, right? That's potentially manipulatable, and that's also just straight doing mortal wounds, right? If it hits on a 3-up, it feels exactly like where I would put it. Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
Okay. So Arwen Jax, son of the Jade Forest. Yes, I did catch this, but I wanted to wait till here. The only thing that could have been better is if it was like the Arwen Jax, son of the Jade Forest.
I would never have committed that to print.
How did I not think of that? That's amazing.
There we go.
Brilliant.
You can still get him on it. Darren. Here we go. Lee, just because you can get him to make this change. This fine. That's his name. But down here in the description, right here in the flavor text, have it say the Arwen Jax, son of the Jade Forest, is armed with nature's vengeance and massive impaling talons. See, I got you covered.
It's required, Owen. It's critical.
You forget that whilst I don't have autonomy across the whole tome, there is one thing I can control, which is how it's designed, so that is happening.
How many emails would it take coming into the email before we get you to bow to the will of the people? Here is the question.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
One from Kathy, and I'll do it. Okay.
Oh, there we go. All right. Okay. So, this is obviously our unique tree character, Tree Lord Ancient specifically. And obviously they're a monster and so on and so forth. They, absorb a lot of the Sylvaneth words we would expect because they are Order Sylvaneth, etc. I noticed that this named Tree Lord Ancient. Tyler, are you ready for this? This unit can attempt to cast 2 spells in your hero phase.
It's not that hard.
We did it, boys. We got there.
We got there.
I let Owen design this one. I mean, I gave him a base. I let Owen sort of have the final say on this Warscroll, and he was very, very determined to have a 2 casting tree.
You made good choices, my friend.
So I'll let you discuss this one, Owen.
Owen, take us through this.
He's only got 1 unbind, but effectively everything else is in line with what you'd expect from a traditional TLA. So Silent Communion, we have a Wildwood popping up. Obviously, if you take him in the Nomad Trail, then that's going to add a Guardian counter to that Wildwood. He has the Ground Shaker, the new Ground Shaker monstrous action, so 3+ fight last or strike last, which is nice. And he can teleport. His teleport is 9 away as opposed to some of the 6-inch auras. And then he's got a couple of special abilities. He's got Wrathful Protector, so he gets +1 attack to his Nature's Vengeance, which is his hammer. So he has this sort of Durthu-esque combat buff. And then, I wanted him to hit reasonably hard, so he has 3 attacks with Nature's Vengeance, which are 3s and 3s, Rend 2, damage 4 flat
I
damage.
remember
4.
you
I mean,
giggling when you went, I'm going to make him damage 4. Because I'd made him in line with the normal TLA, and Owen was like, no, I want damage 4. Okay.
Just-
Go with damage 4.
I mean, I haven't allowed myself too many sort of luxuries in this tome, so I think, flat
Oh, I'm all
damage
for
4.
All for it.
And a bit of rend, you know. And then he has the new Impaling Talons, which are nice, so 2s and 2s, rend 2 damage 3. And then he has Blood Nourishment, which is a really nice ability. So if an attack from a melee weapon carried out by a friendly Sylvaneth unit wholly within range of this ability, it starts at 18 inches. Slays an enemy hero or monster while that Sylvaneth unit is wholly on or within a terrain feature, you can add a Guardian counter. So effectively, through the act of slaying an enemy monster or hero, the blood from that felled beast nourishes the land and then, you know, acts as a stimulant for a new tree lord to sort of rise up from the blood of the enemy. So
What makes the grass grow green? Bright red blood makes the grass grow green. That's right. Okay.
hey,
True story. That's a true story.
and that is, I've made him 20 points cheaper than a TLA because I think the Tree Lord Ancient's overpriced. So he's 340 points.
I was gonna ask you, yeah, like out of 10, where are you right now in terms of like obviously the TLA you kind of build into him with particular lists, right? Like Warsong, TLA, etc. You build into that direction, but in general, where are you at? It sounds like out of 10, where are you right now with the TLA? Like
TLA is like an 8.5 for me at the moment.
Oh, that's pretty high.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
think he's-
I switched from Warsong Rev to TLA. I think the extra teleport. We're going off topic slightly, but yeah, I think the shooting attack, the stomp, reasonable combat damage maybe gives you an opportunity to get the battle tactic where you kill something with the general.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, cool. Right on.
Yeah, I think he's got some play. I would encourage people to play with a TLA in
He's not 360.
No.
There you go.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's rich. But yeah, no, this is great War Scroll.
Oh,
Very fun. All right, let's get to our two littler heroes, the Hedge Hermit and my personal favorite, the Trail Thief. So the Hedge Hermit is your wizard, 4 wounds and a 6-up save. Again, his offense is not why you take this guy. You're not taking him for his weapons. He can throw some rocks or bonk you with his little staff. This model may choose to ignore any effects of scenery rules or abilities on scenery war scrolls, which is fun. That might need a designer's note, I suspect. Yeah. Just because it would let him ignore impassable right now. And you probably don't want to let him ignore impassable stuff and start walking on impassable things where suddenly nobody else could go walk up there and get him.
Yeah, he's not ethereal. No, that's
right.
A good point.
Yeah, he doesn't like pass into the rock. And then friendly tree lords, tree lord ancients, or spirits of Durthu models may be garrisoned by this unit, even though it is not a terrain feature. This model cannot join or leave that model's garrison if that model has made a move in the same phase. Yada yada. So he can ride around on trees, and then of course he has oh boy,
from the central. That's a real word.
I believe you. That's just that I there are many words I've like started. I run up to him and then I'm like, yep, hold on, So, it has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast, friendly Gnomad Feastmasters units wholly within 12 are treated as being wholly on or within a terrain feature. So, there you go. More ability for you to manipulate that who's on a terrain feature. Okay.
120, Vince, for the Hermit.
Completely reasonable for this little. Also, is he missing the wizard text?
It says that is
he
a
is
note. Yeah, he's a one cast wizard. That
yeah.
I have picked up on that. Yeah, so that's
right. I figured as much. Okay, Trail Thief. Tyler, you ready for this guy?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. 4 wounds and a 6-up save. Our little sneaky guy. All right, sneaky guy. Smoke me a kipper. I'll be back for breakfast. Okay, so this dude, he's going behind enemy lines. So instead of setting up this model on the battlefield, you can set it to one side and say it is set up in a concealed position. If you do so, select one of the following missions and say the number of turns this model will attempt the selected mission.
Oh, I'm so excited.
So how many turns are you taking to do this mission? Okay. And you got to say how long you're going to do it. So you got your little gamble here at the beginning. Okay. So here are your gambles. Master of wit and repartee. Your opponent loses a triumph roll and you gain that triumph roll. Okay. His command of the realm directives is uncanny. Once per battle, when your opponent receives a command point, your opponent loses that command point and you gain it instead. How come he's such a genius? Don't ask me. A randomly selected artifact of power carried by one of your opponent's hero keyword models can no longer be used if it was used to enhance a weapon. That weapon reverts back to its normal. At the start of the first battle round, after determining who has the first turn, roll a die and add the number of your turns that this model will attempt the selected mission. On a roll of 6+, the selected mission is successful. Okay? So that's how many turns you're willing to commit. You can shut off an artifact, steal a command point, or get rid of their... switch the triumphs around, right? And this model cannot be set up on the battlefield until after the number of your turns that this model will attempt its selected mission, after which, at the end of your movement phase, you can set up this model on the battlefield more than 6 inches away from enemy units. And remember, there's the other thing where you can set him up 3 inches away. During the start of your hero phase, if this model is still in a concealed position, your opponent may roll a dice. On a 5+, this model loses a wound as it tries to evade capture. If this model loses its last wound before entering the battlefield, it counts as being slain. Dun dun dun. Which is the other thing that the other artifact negates, because then he's no longer concealed. He's just sneaky deaky. So, there you go. And this model always counts as being affected by those lucky scoundrels battle traits, because he's a lucky little guy. So there you go.
The longer you take to do the mission, the more likely you are to get stabbed, but the more likely you are to succeed the mission. I love this Warscroll. I'm glad that you like it, Vince. Cause,
yeah, it's great. It's absolutely great. I love the idea of just stealing all my opponent's artifacts, like just taking them all, baby. So what is this guy's points cost for your Trail Thief?
So for this amazing side quest, it will set you back the princely sum of 110 points.
Worth every penny.
He can never be the general,
Right.
but he is also not unique. So if you want a band of trail thieves all away doing different missions, then fill your boots.
There you go.
I like this because it punishes 1-drops. There's a 1-drop, they're not having an item. You know, I like that.
Tyler, what do you think of the Trail Thief?
Yeah, I love it. It's really cool. Yeah, I wish we had more Warscrolls that were doing things like this in the game. We have a few of these. Very first Warscroll I designed for AOS back in like 2016 was this update to Tyrion to go along with a model I had commissioned by this amazing artist, and it had this kind of side element, right, where as he did something in the game, he got better as the game went on, and it's kind of like, anyway, we had designed an entire, I think, what do we call them? Schemes. Yeah, schemes
Yes.
around this. Kind of similar idea, but no, I love this, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's like these little sort of side quest, side game, mini game, RPG elements, whatever they are that show up, are always fun. It's Blood Knights powering up when they do stuff, right? It's the kitty cat playing the Guess the Dice game in Slaves to Darkness. Yeah, like that stuff's always super fun.
Garcia with the rerolls, that was a fun mini game.
I loved that mini game.
I
I loved it because I loved getting 4 rerolls.
I would have
From my
to shout
Seraphon
out,
opponents, because everybody always picked 4. I'm sorry, go ahead, Owen.
I'm sorry for talking over you. Scar Bloodwrath, I would have to give a shout out to.
100%.
Pop
Oh,
out.
he's my favourite Warscroll in Age of
The
Sigmar.
Menace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
All right. Now we get into the troops themselves, sort of more of our basic troops here. We got 3 different sorts of like basic troops. 4 different, I guess, if you count the Eagle Riders, but I think they're a little more elite. Okay, so our Nomad Scouts, which are not the basic battle line, right? The Drovers are the battle line? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
that's what I thought. The scouts become optional battle line somehow, I think, if I remember right. Is that true? No.
Not at the moment, but we've only got one battle line, so that might change.
Yeah, the
We'll
one
see.
thing jumped out at me was like it may need some tinkering with the battle line because right now you're really kind of hemmed into one position, assuming you're not pulling too hard into like the coalition ogre build or cities build or whatever. Right.
I've had that suggestion before. I just felt like there were 3 different options on that war scroll, and if you don't make it so that people have to take them, they might not. There might not be an army full of little dudes, which is essentially what it should be. I was going to create a war scroll based on halfling women. If you go back and you look at previous sort of halfling tomes, etc., there's always a bunch of women, but there are always these crazy, frenzied sort of things. And I thought, well, that's from a time where the world was a bit more misogynistic. So my way of dealing with ladies being within the trails is it's 50-50. Like everyone fights for the trail. You know, I don't want to go on about it too much, but so that was the other battle line that I had, and then we sort of ran out of time. I was going to maybe some beekeepers. I thought that might
See,
be fun.
now I like it. Okay, here we go. All right. I like where we're going here. Beekeeper sounds fun. Okay, so effectively what the scouts are is these are your little sort of infiltrator shooty boys, right? They can lay down and go prone in terrain, which means they can't shoot or be shot at, but they get to like fight first as they pop up out of the terrain and stab people with their unimpressive by its nature melee weapons. They're one of your reserve units, right? So they can start off board and then pop up again more than 6 inches away, but they have to be holy honor within a terrain feature. You got to bring them out as per normal, as per the core rules. And this unit can ignore any or all modifiers from the "It's been a long day." So they're as the scouts. I assume they're more used to going a little longer without a meal because they have to be out and foraging, and so you know they're not as susceptible to getting as hangry as fast, as it were. Although they can still be hangry if you want, because it's May. So yeah, very nice.
100 points for 10, Vince.
Perfectly reasonable, yeah, for a little 1 wound, 6 up shooter guy. 3 up, 4 up, 18-inch range. Great. How shooting units should be designed. Interesting, varied, like good ability, good reserve, neat stuff, neat interactions. They're obviously barefoot, so they're benefiting from all those barefoot abilities earlier, remember? So like 1s and 2s attack rolls against them always miss. They're +1 to their save characteristic if they're in cover, all that kind of stuff.
So that unmodified wound rolls of 6 that we were talking about at the beginning, is that missile and melee?
Yes. So that's a good point. These are relatively good at taking out sort of enemy characters, which a scout unit should be, you know.
Right.
But they're not. I don't think they're OTT. It's not a guarantee. Basically, on a lucky turn, this unit's actually pretty decent with its output.
Okay, our Griffhound Hobblars. I took a swing at that. I don't know if I'm right.
Nailed it, brother.
Woo, got it. 3 wounds, 9-inch move, 6 up save. They as well have a little bow, as well as obviously some good attacks from their Griffhounds and their little knives. The unit gets 2 attacks for their beaks and claws from their little Griffhounds. This is an interesting way you phrase, or that this is the interesting way this buff turns on. Add 2 to the attacks characteristic of this unit's beaks and claws for attacks made with beaks and claws that target a unit previously hit by attacks made by another friendly forager unit in the same turn. So when they want to swarm something, right? So this unit has the forager keyword. So the second unit that goes in of any kind of forager, then your little beaks and claws are now making 4 attacks.
They all work together to hunt, and that's what happens in the rules, hopefully.
Yep.
The foragers are the scouts, the hobblars, the eagles, and the trail thief, just for context.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you very much. And then this is a very fun ability that will frustrate people, but it's quite good on a unit like this. Each time this unit attacks with its melee weapons, it can make a normal move after all of its attacks have been resolved. If it does so, it must finish the normal move more than 3 inches from enemy units. And then they have the warning cry ability like Griffhounds do. So they can like, bop, scream out, and then everybody can turn and shoot. So, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, darting attack, very solid. Like, you see how these guys are meant to play. Like, you want to come in, you want to hit, and then you want to run and hit and run and stuff like that, right? Yeah, absolutely. But you've got to risk the swing back there on the second unit or whatever it is, because you want somebody else to attack first to open up your bonus. But if you do, then that person can then say, okay, well, I'm going to attack the second unit that hasn't gotten to dart away yet. But if they do that, then you're also deciding the order of their activations. So it's lots of play and counterplay there, which I know, Darren, that's probably, I'm sure, exactly what was in your mind when you were designing.
Absolutely, that's what I love. make your opponent have to make difficult decisions. You know,
Yeah.
that's what, and that fits in with their narrative as well. I think, you know, they'd be all over the place, wouldn't they? These little dudes, you wouldn't know who to hit.
Yep.
And they are 120 for 5.
For 5, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Right on.
How much were the scouts?
Scouts were 100 for 10.
10. Cool. Yep.
Nomad Scouts riding Jade Eagles. So 16-inch move, like your speed demons in this army. 3 wounds
We
and
need
a 6-up
something.
save. Yeah, sure. You got to have somebody who can actually move, right? Again, they are foragers, and they have tandem hunting. Improve the Rend characteristic of this unit's beaks and talons by 2 for attacks made with beaks and talons that target a unit previously hit by attacks made by another friendly forager unit. So just like the little dudes on Gryph-hound, these guys have the same ability where they want to go and work together in a pack. And then Thermal Highway, if the last meal eaten from the Go With Your Gut battle trait for this unit was lunch, then this unit may receive the redeploy command without the command being issued and without a command point being spent. In addition, instead of making a redeploy roll for this unit, you can choose the result of the roll. The result chosen for a d6 roll must be a whole number from 1 to 6. So if they benefit from lunch, or you make them benefit from lunch in any of the ways we mentioned previously, then you can redeploy away 6 if you want to, or whatever you need to do.
Well, it's part of the day, right? There's all those thermals out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. These guys are super cool. What's our point? What are we in for on these guys, Owen?
A very reasonable 130 for 5.
Yeah.
Very reasonable. That is extremely reasonable, maybe.
Yeah. I agree. That's that's an area we've had from feedback from before. So, but again, we'll see.
Yeah, sure. It's you don't have to. No, you don't have to second guess yourself into oblivion, right? You test and then you see. Okay, then our actual little battle line, boys, which is the Nomad Drovers. These guys have a lot of little different ways they can be armed. They're little clubs, they're short spears, they're pots and spoons. They have their drover bows, and they come in 15 model units, or 15 models to a unit, right?
Yeah.
Tyler, look at this brutal stat line here. Here we go. 4-inch move, 1 wound, save of dash, 5 bravery. Okay. Feel the power. Now, if they have little shields, okay, if they have short spears and their bracken shields, they do get a save characteristic of 6+. So let's not.
Well, I guess.
It's 4 in cover. It's not too bad.
Okay, I was gonna ask. Yeah. Okay. Yep. That's what I was going, Darren.
Well, no,
100%.
it'll be a 6-up save ignoring. No, would it not be a 5-up ignoring Rend 1 in cover?
It'd be if there was no rend, they'd technically save on a 4+ in cover, because they are barefoot, right? Because the shield made it set it to 6-up, and then the cover sets it to 5-up, and then the cover +1 save would mean they can succeed on a 4. So yes, they can somehow go from no save to potentially a 4-up against no rend. That can happen. That is in the cards. God forbid you catch them not on these guys. Really, what's the Corn Priest ability that makes you like move? Right, that like pulls you, their get over here ability.
Bloodbind.
Yeah. Boy, do they not like that, pulling them off of terrain in any way. Like, I just need one of you little idiots to step off this terrain. Come here.
Nothing scares a drover more than a great Bray shaman with Devolve.
Right.
Just come over here, baby.
Exactly. And I would point out these guys do have the loudmouth ability as well, so they get the 3-up ward roll in the charge phase. Pretty cool. So you can send them into stuff and not fear the unleash. You can ignore deadly, and they don't get stomped as easy, and all that kind of stuff. So very cool. And these guys are 100 for 15. Am I right there?
Correct.
Excellent.
They've got the Rabble Oomph ability, which is if they've got more than 20, if they score a hit, they get another hit. Now, that sounds amazing. It's essentially the skink buff, where you double the amount of attacks. But you don't need to double the amount of attacks. You don't need to slow down the game. You can just do this.
Yeah, don't select an extra that many dice. Just do the one hit
Let's
becomes
finish
2
the
hit.
game.
Yeah. It's the same way the Stormcast like multi-shooty things work. Their hurricane ballistas or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Okay. And then Yanela Lightfoot, which is our big giant swan riding hero. Darren, tell us about this girl here.
We need a centerpiece, I feel. Every faction's got its, king or queen or its big, we've got Nagash, we've got Alariel, we've got Scarbrand, we've got Kairos. So this is their big sort of centerpiece. And she's like the manifestation of all the hedge hermits and Gyron, everything that's pure within the trail. She flits about making, keeping the trails as safe as possible. And I really wanted to play up some of her rules. One of my favourite rules that I sort of came up with was like the reverse rend. So she's got shimmering feathers, where her save characteristic will change depending on the strength of the rend that's attacking her. She's essentially ethereal, so you can't modify that save in any way. So you can't roll out defense it, and you can't. The enemy rend won't then affect the save. So if you're rend 0, she's got a 5-up save. If you're rend 1, she's got a 4-up save. Rend 2, a 3-up save, and so on. So her save gets better the harder she gets hit, basically. And I just enjoy that. It's difficult to get your head round, in game. People aren't going to understand that until they see it, and I really like interactions like that. And again, it's something that's different. We've not seen it elsewhere. Again, going back to an earlier point, there's not a great deal of design space that's left within Age of Sigmar, so I'm just trying to explore as many of those options as possible. So I really like that. She's got an average. She's not particularly fighty, which is a common theme throughout. Because I don't think we should have a massive fighty character, but she does have a very, I think, powerful spell. Sanguine. I can't see it there. Yes, she. You basically take a battle shock test at the end of the combat phase, and you're not allowed, if you've got any abilities that ignore battle shock. They don't count. So it's a way of getting around Ossiarch Bone Reapers or some Fire Slayers that are nearer an objective. I know you don't like Fire Slayers, Vince, so you'll be pleased.
I'm always happy to see dwarves run away, so it sounds great. And battle shocking off Mortek Guard, I think, makes 3 out of the 4 people in this call very happy.
No comment.
Well, I actually needed them to be able to deal with high armor save. So this was like my anti. This is my way of dealing with.
Yeah, and
that.
She's doing a lot. Like, she's making it so those lucky scoundrels apply to all friendly Nomad Feastmasters units in the first battle round. She's making it so you can basically get breakfast, lunch, and dinner applying to like a pretty big sweep of your battlefield all at once. If your opponent chooses to like play it against what you said, right? Like they have the choice not to do that. They can just not grant that ability if they just don't do the thing you said you wanted, right? So it's, again, interesting choice. Very, very visible, known information counterplay there.
I like that. It's the sort of thing as well that you may not understand. So when you make a decision, and if you've made the wrong one and it becomes apparent later on the turn, your opponent might be, if they've done that rather, they might be super negged out about it. And you can be like,
One side note I would say is that having posted the tome into some of the, let's say, more competitive and beardy chats that I'm in, several top players were like, Yanela, auto-include, every list, Yanela. One thing I really like about her scroll as well is that she casts D3 spells. So I don't think I've ever seen that before, and I think that's cute.
That is fun. What are we paying for this incredible auto-include?
Why don't you guess, Vince? Why don't you guess?
Okay, sure. Given her abilities as a centralized buff piece, she's not incredibly tough. But I think she's probably like... She can very much turn a lot of the battle. So what? 300, 320?
You're very close. 290.
Okay. Yeah.
She could be a bit more. She could be a bit more. But
Yeah, I think you. If competitive people say auto include, that's your first sign that you got to ratchet up the points. That right there is what that means.
100%. Yeah, agreed. But we're close, right? I think
Yeah,
we're-
absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's
It's
right
not
onto my
good,
initial
man.
instinct. So yeah, there you go. Not too bad. And I did not remember her points from earlier at all because I didn't read hers. My first thing I did when I looked at the points was I just went to the like battle line stuff, right? Because that's gonna be where you start. All right, take us through the 3 endless spells. We got a few more minutes here, and then we'll close up.
Yeah, of course. Speed it through. So we've got the Spectral Briar Hedge. I think hedge is like a nice protective sort of theme of the nomads. And if your nomads are near the hedge, then if they're within 3 inches of if they're within an inch of the hedge, their ranged attacks become 3 inches. And if the enemy are within 3 inches of the hedge, their ranged attacks become an inch. So basically, the nomads can fight over the hedge, and they can't be fought back.
Nice.
And then if there's a bubble, I think it's 6 inches. If the nomads are within that, then they can't be hit on a 1, 2, or 3, which is quite significant. And again, those attacks can't be re-rolled. So it's a nice defensive buff piece. We've then got the Habica Sentry, which I like. This plays around nicely with Guardian tokens. It's got the stomp. It's basically a spirit of a young tree lord, basically.
Yeah, great use of an extra Kurnoth. I love it. Just like take a Kurnoth Hunter, you've got your endless spell. Boom, got him.
And so you can make a unit fight last with essentially its stomp, and then if it's near a piece of scenery that's got any guardian counters on it, you can pick a unit within an enemy unit within 12 inches, and you do that many mortal wounds to it. So you don't have to exchange your guardian tokens for a tree lord. You can stack them up if you want to, and then zap something, and then spring out your tree lord. So I quite like that. And then the last one is my favourite model within the range so far. It was created. All the Ender spells were created by Lee Whiteley. Also, shout out to Benjamin Sava and Adam Kunis, who did some of the models. I forgot to sort of mention them earlier, but we've had a lot of help with those. But Lee Whiteley did the Ender spells, and this is the Detritus. I basically creating this tome. I went through the Thesaurus, so I'm not particularly au fait with some of them.
It's detritus.
Thank you, Owen. Detritus denizens, which is like all the little grubs. They come out of a scenery piece that's anywhere on the table. It's a bit like Skulltide. Then you roll 6 dice. Any 5s are a mortal wound, and then if you take a mortal wound, you can no longer use any rerolls for anything. So can't use any rerolls for casting. Can't use any rerolls for saving, etc. The tome itself, I know we're short on time, but the tome itself is supposed to attack your opponent's value, like it was inspired by the Halfling Hot Pot in Blood Bowl. I don't know if you ever played that, but that would steal your opponent's rerolls and it would give you the rerolls. So that's the whole sort of premise of the tome.
Very nice. What are our points, Owen, for the 3 endless spells?
Again, all very reasonable. 40 for the Briar Hedge, and then 50 each for the Sentry or the Detritus Swarm.
Feels very appropriately costed to me. I'm liking where we're living. Lastly, we leave with the Gastronome Encampment. It is a single terrain feature consisting of 3 Gastronome Encampment models that all touch. They all touch tips like a wildwood. And the scenery rules for this is after territories have been chosen, but before armies are set up, you can set up the encampment wholly within 6 inches of an objective within your territory. So very different rules, right? You're wanting to set it up right around an objective within your territory. No other restrictions apply when setting up the encampment. If this isn't possible because of other things, you get to scoot the terrain and so on and so forth. It is a single terrain feature. It is an obstacle. Nomad Feastmasters units treat this terrain feature as having the inspiring scenery rule. And when determining control of an objective, each Gnomad Feastmaster's barefoot model wholly on or within a gastronome encampment count as 2 models instead of 1, and enemy units may not be set up within 3 inches of this terrain feature. If there are 10 or more Gnomad Feastmaster models wholly on or within the encampment, roll a dice each time an enemy unit uses an ability whose effect involves picking this terrain feature. On a 3+, that ability has no effect. So you can't smash to rubble it or anything like that.
Right, they fight it off. A bit of counterplay.
Absolutely. In addition, on an unmodified 6, that enemy unit suffers D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. So I love the terrain feature. Honestly, stood out to me as just being such a great piece of design. I love the idea of them rolling up, setting up around the objective, and being like, okay, this one's ours. This is where we've set up our camp, right? And then that proceeds to have benefits to them. It's just such a fun play. That space that we haven't played with yet with any of the terrain. You felt like that could have been done, but it never got done. So it's just a great piece of design.
Well, they're quite slow, aren't they? So they're a heavily defensive army. So I wanted to try and make it as unique. I wanted it to be a unique gaming experience, but still feel very Age of Sigmar. So how do you sort of achieve that? Well, you do that with the Lucky Scoundrel rule, and you do that with this defensive piece of scenery. Yeah, I like that.
Very good.
One thing we did very quickly, one little story, is Darren and I had one very late night little bit of playtesting where I think I threw about
Jackson.
about 40 zombies, a necromancer, and a vampire lord towards 20 brave lads inside the encampment. And they held their own for a long time. It was great. All the little buffs and stuff
You
get.
killed them to a man in the 5th turn, didn't you? It
I
was.
just killed them to a man. But yeah, it's very thematic having that encampment, as you say, Vince, being the heart of the army. It's great.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of the book. And I'll have you share out maybe some of the lists or something on Twitter or whatever that you had. So we can, because Owen had sent along a couple lists if we had time, which sadly we don't. But that's okay. Great, gentlemen, great fun work. For all of you out there watching, do not forget that you can download this. The link is down in the description. And if when you read it, you've got feedback, be it, things you find or just your general experience with it, there is an email down there. You can also send your feedback on the Gnomad Feastmasters back into Owen and Darren. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this, for doing this review. Super awesome, fun time. Really loved it.
Thank you.
For all of you out there watching, don't forget to give it a like. Check out the tome. This is amazing. This project was so many hours of work by so many people in the community. I really hope more people pick up this torch, and maybe also other masochists out there who really love the idea of killing themselves for something that they truly love, and take up this mantle. So thank you both very much. For all of you, don't forget to hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, check out the link. We've got a Patreon you can support us down below. So that's it. That's hobby focused if you want to take your next step on your hobby journey. We've got merch. You can say whether or not you're Team Tyler or Team Tom. We're going to total at the end of the year and see who the big winner is. Who is the most beloved co-host? Only you can decide. We decide through capitalism, of course. That's as with all things. But as always, thank you, gentlemen, so much for watching. Thank you out there so much for watching. As always, we'll see you next Wednesday.
Oh, thank you, guys.